That's too loud. So,
Yeah,
Thank
can
you.
advocate right up front.
is this okay? Okay.
Yeah, you don't have to be so close.
All right.
These are better mics.
All right. So we'll I guess we'll start the June 13th special retreat meeting. Should we get a call to order? Roll call.
Yes, Chair Thompson,
Present.
Vice Chair Hirsch,
Present.
Board Member Baltai,
Present.
Board Member Chen,
Present.
Board Member Rosenberg.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I think we aren't having oral communications today because this is a retreat.
That's correct.
Okay, so we'll just dive right into it. So our first item is to discuss the ARB award winners and ceremony. So we just need to discuss next steps. Our last thing we did was we picked the winners. And then we just need to figure out what we're doing next. So in the staff meeting, staff report says we'll need to send out notices and then assign specific addresses to board members to create a description and also to work with the architect team to obtain professional photos for the project. And then we can talk about a timeline and maybe pick a date for the ceremony. So is there anything more formal? Should we just like try to see who's into what projects to do that?
Yeah, I think we're in a retreat format, so we can sort of talk freely. I do have a, sorry, let me share my screen here. I just have the notes that we had taken from the previous hearings. And so this is a little bit small. Let me see if I can make this. So we had taken some notes on some of these award winners as far as like why we thought they were award winning. And so with the Middlefield project, we talked about high quality materials and landscaping, things of that nature. So I can go back over these, but it might be worth probably doing some assignments, you know, if everybody sort of takes a project, because we do need to put together sort of a detailed write-up. I mean, although we can discuss that as well, but we would want to have something about, you know, why they're award winning and that sort of thing.
Sorry, didn't we already make assignments? I remember
That's a good
being
point.
given one or two. of them.
Yeah,
Yes,
might
we
have been
gave
with the
them
old
with-
members.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe we
members,
just, should we just, can we leave mics on? Will it?
No, I don't think it creates echo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. I
If we
think
all
we
right,
can
just
just
leave
leave
them
them on.
That's
Yeah,
easier.
then it's easier to talk freely. Yeah.
is.
Yeah, we may have
Oh,
done
shoot, I
assignments with
lied.
the old members,
did.
but I think we need to
I can
redo
redo
them with the new members because we ended up adding a couple new projects after
Just
the old members.
We
left.
added the one,
The one.
Which one?
The,
Forest
um,
Avenue.
correct,
Mhm.
the last one.
Okay.
So
And so if I'm understanding correctly, these happen every 5 years?
Yes, and
Correct.
we're a
So has-
little off track because of the
I was
pandemic.
gonna say, so has
Quite
anyone on
off
this
track.
board written up
Year and
a
3
review like
months.
this before? Are we sort of like figuring that, like, has anyone done this before?
I don't know that this particular board has. Yeah, because we,
yeah, our two former board members had.
yeah, Alex and
and they
Grace,
both
yeah.
left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
we're
but
kind
it,
of
I mean,
starting
it's, the bylaws are not very specific in this regard though either. So, I mean, it really is fairly free form as far as how we want to do it.
So the description will be more like the architect to describe their design concepts for the board to say something about why it is they're the winner.
I think it's both. Yeah. I
Okay.
think it's, you know, let's as a board sort of agree, you know, why we're giving it an award, or at least at a high level, you know, some bullet points of why we're giving it an award. And then you would be working with the project architect so that they could give you a project description or, you know, I don't know if you want them to tell you what their design process was, or
Mhm.
you can sort of think of what you want the architect to give you.
I think I was just barely on the board the last time this went through. It was 2015. I have just joined the board. One of the first things they did, because it really felt like them, was do this public presentation with these awards. And that wraps into what I want to say, because I thought the public presentation was actually embarrassing, because there was almost nobody there.
Wow.
And it just was 5 board members standing around trying to talk about these things without really much substance or presentation behind it. I think it'll be even less represented this time, given the pandemic we've been through. My thought was, instead of having a public ceremony, if we put together a good display in the lobby, got the city to put it on the website, main city website for a month, a banner, flyer, architecture review. And we focused instead on just a good presentation. I think it would be more effective
I was
in the
wondering,
use of our time.
sort of to add to your thought there, is it possible to get the big screen in here to use that, to talk to the person who
Yeah, absolutely.
does that in the hallway?
So my thought was that if we could just prepare a good image or display or something for each one of these winning things.
Kind of like an installation in the lobby
Yeah,
or something.
installation.
Well, it could be, instead of getting panels, if we could do it digitally on the main screen here and have these projects kind of come up the way they, things float on that screen. Be kind of wonderful. Everybody comes in the building, will see them award.
I think both ideas are great. I think because the screen is going to have a time limit to it. Whereas, if we wanted to do a web page, I mean, maybe we do a web page that lives on for longer,
What is the time? You mean it has a time limit of when you can
It'll
put
just
that up?
flash on for a second and then it'll go away.
But also too, I mean, but
We have other things to flash through.
Can't be one
Yeah,
day or something like that?
oh yeah, I'm sure it could be a whole day. Maybe it could be a whole week, but I
Yeah.
mean, after that week, it's gone.
Right.
And so that's why I'm thinking the website would live
Okay,
on
so
longer.
maybe you
I
want-
agree. I think that's a good idea to have something that's more permanent on the website base and then something that's a little bit more temporary here. Now, the
Yeah.
question I have is, does anyone do models anymore? Like,
Yeah.
because you walk into a
Yeah.
lobby and you see the model of what they were building, and if the architecture firms have them, those would be really cool to display. But I don't know if anyone even does those anymore.
Can't
It's
use as
all
a model shop.
Doubt it.
3D.
Yeah, I mean, we could,
Too
we could,
expensive.
Can't
Yeah.
use as a model shop, but I don't even know if they use it.
yeah, I mean, we have
Peter
models
does
for really
models.
select
Yeah.
I used
projects.
to do models.
Yeah.
It's
Peter's
nice.
good at that.
I think
No,
that's
I
a really
haven't
good
thought
idea,
about
though.
it.
Like, what if we talk to the architects
Right.
and maybe find out what kind of materials they already have?
Mhm.
And then maybe we can reconvene and decide.
Yeah, I mean, even having a sample material board where someone can like come up and touch what was used, or I don't know, something that's a little
Yeah.
bit more physical. I mean, I love the digital presence, don't get me wrong, but I also think that having that physicality of what
You're
they're
right.
looking at would be kind of interesting. Even if it's like
Absolutely.
not all the projects, but whoever happens to have it available, right?
Do you guys get the Uplift local emails?
Mm.
And those really like define like destinations or like events that are happening. And like maybe we do have an award ceremony that's
Mhm.
like the opening of this whatever month-long installation that's here in the lobby for the architecture review board winners. But it could be something where we like maybe do better advertising so that
Does the
like-
winner get any certificate or some kind of thing that they can display in
Yes.
their office or?
They do.
do they?
That's up to us. We get to decide
can
that.
make
but-
Well, and I also like the idea of the online website that sort of lives on in perpetuity, because then on their websites, like they can link back to it. So sorry, thank you. So for example, if they, they can say we won this award in this page, and then on their own websites, they can link back to the website where we're showing that they were an award winner. So I do think that living on in perpetuity on the website is a good idea for those companies. I don't know.
So of the projects, if you see the list on packet page 6.
Yep.
I think that, I don't know all of them, but Middlefield Road was
Mhm.
one for me,
Mhm.
New Junior Museum. And the other one was, I think 611 Cowper. Do you know what yours were? Or do you have-
Or are we trying to remember who's assigned what?
And
Um,
Peter, I think.
I cared
was,
so much about it at the time and now I can't.
Embarcadero.
remember.
let's put a pin on that in a second. I think let's finish talking about, there seems to be more action items in terms of like, are we creating a plaque? Who's creating the plaque?
Yeah.
Are we doing an
We
installation?
would do that. I mean, if you guys want to design it or something, but Medina and I would physically get it.
Would it be a plaque or a certificate? Like, do we have a budget for this? What's the financial
have a budget?
obligation here?
I'm looking at you
Sorry.
for budget.
Unlimited, right?
I'm just
How
doing
about-
gold plated.
There we go.
The awards we do for ARB members.
Yeah.
What, those aren't too costly, are they?
Let me check. Let me check how much it was just to create.
Just
There-
a
yeah.
paper certificate is adequate. That's all. Any office just wants to put it on the wall or on their website.
Like a seal or something.
Yeah, don't spend money on some plastic.
No laser cut cool things.
No, laser cut. Give me
Darn
some-
it. Something like laser
I've got
cut.
a-
and
I've got a
wood,
shelf
that'd
full of that stuff that these guys give me every year. I don't know what to do with it.
be- Too many awards.
No, it's just these
For-
silly
For
trinkets.
one?
It is kind of silly and.
Oh, okay.
That's high.
Okay. It is a
Okay,
fair,
maybe
yeah.
we just print it on paper.
Okay.
Nice paper, please.
Really nice
Fancy
I
paper.
think if you could get the mayor to sign it,
There you
put it
go.
on the official
Yeah.
paper with a seal, that means something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really
That's a
about
great
what it
idea.
needs to be.
Okay. And I mean, we can do a council hearing as well. I mean, that's another possibility.
Sure, if they're up for that.
I think that would be great, just
Yeah.
to kind of bring it to
Why
their
not make
attention.
that the public ceremony.
I was
Just have
thinking
them read-
something nicer than like a
Well,
city council
what's
meeting.
been done before is you do sort of a pre-meeting with, I know we've done some appetizers and things like that as a pre-meeting where you're sort of gathering in the lobby here, and then everyone goes to the council meeting and they get their certificate and their handshake and that sort of thing.
So the certificate will goes to the architect or maybe the
Yes.
business owner, the building owner, like.
No, this is architects.
Okay,
Yeah.
It's just design
Yeah.
only.
so there will be not something like in the building, like the lead certificate, there is a logo.
Oh, that's
there.
interesting.
So when people go past the project, they know, oh, this is something that the city.
Oh, like a
Like-
logo at the
Yeah,
project
uh-huh.
site.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like an ARB award-winning project that they can display at the
Whoa.
project.
Oh, like
itself,
a
the
lead-
lead ones.
Like a
yeah.
lead
Yeah.
logo.
Or is
That's-
it too much?
Well, I mean,
I've
I've
never done that with other.
I think it'd have to be probably something that the architect would pay for at that point,
Yeah.
for them to install it
Yes.
on their building.
Okay.
But
Fair enough.
there's no reason why we couldn't do such a thing.
Right.
No, but we're kidding ourselves. if
That's
we
a really
think
good
people
idea.
Care that much about this. It's just not that big a
They
deal.
should. That's the
Well,
point.
it's
We're
not.
supposed to
Last time there
promote this.
was 5 board members plus Amy and a couple of staffers and 3 or 4 of the people who won showed up. It's
Maybe it
really
wasn't
embarrassing. Just
publicized
nobody-
well
nobody
last
did. Nobody
time.
stands up to- Nobody comes by to collect their reward. Because, it's 5 o'clock in the day and everybody's busy.
I think if there's enough advertising, it could be a
We
good
can
thing.
make this a big deal.
Could make it a
I
big
don't-
deal.
Well, I mean, it's sort of up to you guys because if you're calling 1 or 2 architects, you sort of have to get them personally jazzed up about
I
it.
don't think I could get Ken Taves down here. I doubt it.
You can't get Ken down
You
here?
can't get Ken down here?
Some architects are
Calling
from
a
out
personal
of
favor,
town.
but that's
you
what
know.
it takes. I mean.
I
look,
feel like
it's,
if I owned an architecture firm, which I don't, but if I like won an award at a city, I'd like go.
Yeah, you
Like,
might.
And Ken's got a fair amount of work in the city too.
Yeah,
so-
why wouldn't
used
Ken
to, it's
go?
not so much.
This is on record, right? Ken.
I'm sure he's not listening.
Now he's required to come.
Look,
Ken
I'm
Hayes
just
is very
saying that.
local.
There's the camera.
The
Look
more we
directly
can
into
make
the
this
camera.
Digitally presentable on the website, presentable in the
Yeah.
lobby, the more successful it will be, in my opinion.
Yeah, that seems like almost a bare minimum of things to like have it. on
Okay,
the
but we
website.
talked about having the TVs, as a short-term installation. We can do the website long-term.
Mhm.
We're gonna do a paper certificate,
Mhm.
and we're gonna talk to council if they can hand that out.
And that paper certificate should have the mayor's signature, and some sort of official city documentation seal.
Mhm.
I think that would mean something, just a certificate with
Agreed.
an official seal from the city
Agreed.
that is something, that's worth something.
And they can
Website.
digitally produce it for their own brochure if they want.
Well, I should think they could reproduce it as ever they like, it's their certificate.
Should
There's
we
no copyright to them, is there? No, of course.
should we revisit the concept of the lobby installation after we've chatted with the other architects to see what kind of materials they would have?
Yeah, I do think it's gonna be a little bit dependent. Like the Junior Museum Zoo might have a model, right, that they can physically display I mean, it might even be on display in the museum
In
right
the
now,
museum.
and then we just borrow it for a month. And I would imagine that the residential one probably does not, right? So
Right.
there's it's sort of seeing what they have and what's
Right.
available might
It's true.
sway how we present in the lobby.
And there isn't that much space
Right.
in this lobby to have a model of everything anyway.
Exactly.
Well, one way to get more buy-in might be to let each firm make their own award presentation. So each firm has an easel.
Yep. That's a
one
great
poster
idea.
board or one display of a model. And they get this much space, and we have there's 8 of them, and we have enough space around the lobby to put 8 up.
Yep.
And that's the primary thing. And everybody, the website, everything, the council meeting drives people to come to the lobby to see the award-winning displays. The architects might feel a desire not to be embarrassed by having the least desirable presentation, so they want to
Yeah.
sort of up it a little bit.
No, and that's a
That
fair
often
point.
works.
Yeah,
for
that they,
firms.
that they'll want to
Competition.
maintain their own branding and a certain level of aesthetic and a presentation. So if we put it together, it's very different than if they put it together.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think what we would want to do then is just establish the parameters for that, and then each board member who's supervising each winner, make sure they get
Reviews
it
it.
done.
Yeah.
But I would think the risk of having your name associated with a blank board in City Hall for a month is enough of an impetus that
That's a
the
good
architects
point.
will come down and do something.
Yeah, it's
And
good
then-
marketing.
And then once they have an easel here, maybe they will show up for a glass of wine. Well, can't do wine anymore, right?
Sparkling apple juice.
That's for. glass of sparkling
Martinelli's.
water at $5.
Don't knock Martinelli.
And then in terms of the display though, I guess would we provide a size like 24 by 36
I mean, that's
portrait?
standard.
I
Yeah,
think we'd
those
have to
two.
come up with a standardized
Yeah,
number of square feet of floor area or display easel or something.
I think the easel is a great idea. I think 24 by 36 is sort of a natural number for all of us. It's what we use regularly. And then just having it sort of mounted on foam core or something like that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought too much how you
Well,
might
they-
Yeah.
present it, but I mean.
Yeah,
they're
they know they
architects,
have an
and
easel, they have to mount it on something.
You just give a
Yeah.
parameter and then the architects, that's easy. That's
And maybe we
all
can
they
say
want.
if you have a model, then that's like
Yeah.
bonus.
Well, I
But
would
if you,
say-
everybody needs a 24 by 36.
My understanding, Ken, is that the other guys are bringing a model.
Ken definitely has to watch this now. I think that's a good
All
idea.
right.
So how much time should we give people to do this?
Month.
A month? That seems reasonable.
A month gets you into what? I mean, that's a month to get it ready.
I was gonna
When
say
is
it's
it going to-
summertime
That's
too.
not enough
I
time.
would think. it
Do
has
we
to
need
be-
permissions to use the space in there?
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna have to, I mean, I would assume we can get it easy enough, but I definitely need to talk to the powers that be.
Shoot to launch it in September, first week. of
That's
September.
what I would
That's a
say
good
too.
idea.
Because after the summer.
Labor Day?
Summer,
Firms are gonna need a month or two to put a staffer on this.
Fair enough.
take us a while
So
to get to
September,
them and
first week of
how.
September.
Everybody's
You know.
really busy. and this
Well,
is
and
September.
council's not even back till August and it's gonna be so,
Yeah.
agendas will be cram packed in early August.
Okay.
Do we want to do on a council day or like a more reasonable,
I was
like people
wondering,
might be free like a Thursday
do we
evening?
do we want to do it with an award in council chambers? Because you've got 8 of them to, it's an awful lot of people.
Yeah,
awards.
it almost sounds like we don't want to encroach on the council
Yeah,
meeting now
the
that I'm
council
thinking about
thing
it.
is a 1 person, 2 people maybe.
The council should pass a resolution where they read the names of the winners into the record. And the mayor just sort of makes
Simple.
that proclamation.
that's
I don't know that you want to have everybody file up in front of the council.
And
The
they all
council
have
probably
to
doesn't
Big
come
want
to
thing.
a specific.
No
date like
handshakes.
that.
I mean, we could
They
invite,
can give us a 5-minute proclamation and then maybe get Tom Dubois to do it instead of Pat or something. But
well, we could invite the council members to come to the
That's right,
event.
that's right.
That's the opening night of our
The,
installation night.
the council, you said.
Yeah, we could like invite them to come
To a
to,
council meeting.
no,
It's a-
to the opening ceremony, the like
or
ceremony
opening
that is the
ceremony,
award,
Which is already.
which we're
something
still
we
having.
Would want to do anyhow, so. we
Right.
would Prime, that's the prime.
I just wonder if it's
Opportunity.
not a council meeting date. I mean, it's an extra time for council to come down here,
Oh, yeah.
Um,
no, I wouldn't do that.
What days do they meet? Mondays and
Mondays.
Wednesdays?
just Mondays
Just Mondays.
normally.
It's not the most convenient evening Poor folks. But those go so late too. Like it didn't.
Well,
make
this would,
sense to
this
do
They
would be
would
an
do this
early thing.
first.
Yeah,
It'd be
this
like
would be a first.
half an hour before their meeting starts or something.
Oh, okay. But that's into the workday.
I'll try it once more. It's not worth having a reception. Just have the council make a proclamation, set it up so it's formally unveiled the same day they make the proclamation, and we're done.
I don't know. I think it'd be fun to have something like on a Thursday night to like. I mean, we don't. How often do we celebrate this? Right, once every 5 years, and in
years.
this case, once every 7 years.
Okay, well, then the ARB we should get a big budget for that thing, because we're gonna go out to the bar afterwards. Well, I was
Now you're
thinking,
talking.
we're long due a party.
Yeah.
Right, we
Alex
are.
Liu is still waiting for us to celebrate his decades of experience here. So
Well,
we can
and-
do that on a Thursday or Friday night.
I think that's better. Thursday, Friday night. If the council would like to come, they're welcome.
Yeah, they don't have
Um,
to.
Highly encouraged.
Yeah.
Because there will be photo opportunities to celebrate
Oh, yeah, get
promoting.
the paper over here, right?
Oh, we can call Gennady or someone.
Hmm?
Call Gennady from Palo Alto
Oh,
Online.
Yeah, yeah, we can get it in the paper.
It doesn't need to be
And the
too long.
post.
It doesn't need to be like a 3 hour event. I mean, just like
No, yeah.
cocktail hour and a half, something like that. Just
Seltzer,
presentations.
water hour.
Seltzer water hour. excuse me.
Yeah, like six-
Mocktail hour.
Mocktail hour.
Mocktail
Is
hour.
that a hard and
Juice
fast
hour.
rule, or?
Don't know. I know there was a previous director that came from Napa, and so she was very
It's
happy
not
to bring
applied
wine to
state.
events, but I don't know if I don't know if we have to bring the wine ourselves. Like I don't know, the city can't buy it.
Let's ask.
We can buy alcohol, yeah, with the city one.
Yeah.
Yeah, accounts payable will not allow.
As a
I know,
teetotaler.
we can call-
It would
I'm
have to
okay
be a
with that.
potluck idea.
Potluck, BYOB.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fine. I'll make it easy.
Oh, yeah, that's a great idea, Paula. Okay.
I think that's where I'm probably like, no, we're not gonna having casseroles and things. Like, I think just little
It doesn't, yeah, it
apps,
doesn't feel very fancy.
Finger food.
li-
Yes.
finger food.
This is
little-
this is a potluck where only
seltzer
one
water.
person brings everything, which is
Maybe the
Peter.
chair should appoint a committee to be in charge of this social event.
Well, we're talking about it as a board, and then yeah, maybe if we want, well, we're each gonna have responsibility for a certain architect
So
or
last
project.
time, how did we spread the news? Like there is an opening ceremony here. Do we send out the emails to all the residents or just?
I was.
Sounds like
just
it
on the
wasn't
board
well
for a
done.
month or two, so I was
Oh,
just
okay.
told to be standing in the lobby there, and I was. I had no idea what was going on. I just stood there.
I think it sounds like we want to maybe do a better job
Get
than maybe
more
last time.
exposure, media exposure. And
And especially if it's 2-3 months out, then we'll have a lot of ample time to like get people hyped up.
Well, I think that's where your uplift local
Yeah.
email comes in. It would be something like that.
Yeah.
How is that uplift local distributed? I mean,
Email.
We're on the list, but does everybody know about it?
I know my husband's not on the list, even though he lives in Palo Alto. So I'm not
It's
sure
not
how I got.
automatic, but like my mom's definitely on it because she just likes to keep in touch with what's going on in Palo
Yeah, I
Alto.
was
So I
gonna
think you
say,
sign up
it's
for it.
active citizens.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Who've signed up for it.
Well, okay. So I guess, are we thinking September then?
September, and then it's up
September,
for the month
yeah.
of September.
8th or 9th?
Let staff see if they can organize what.
Yeah, yeah.
What would work with.
Yeah.
Getting a council date and making sure you can reserve the lobby for a chunk of time.
So the 8th is a Thursday. And then there's the 15th, which is one of our ARB days.
Mhm.
So,
Well, you could also agendize it on the ARB, and this would do it as part of our meeting. It's just to present the awards to people.
in the daytime?
Yeah, and then the cocktail hours that same night.
Oh, just to like tell
But if
everybody.
the
to-
council doesn't want to do it, then we could do it that way.
Okay.
That's entirely
Well,
within our control to set the
okay.
schedule and everything.
We kind of had a meeting where we announced all the winners, didn't we?
Yeah, but we didn't present the awards, we just. Like, you're not gonna get, you're not gonna get people.
More formal.
At
Okay.
a couple $100 an hour, there's no way I'm just gonna come down here for this and spend half a day. for a meeting. It's gonna be hard. It's gotta be some evening social event if you really wanna get people here.
Right. So the question is if we want it on the same day as we have a meeting or on the off week.
Yeah, so September 1st and 15th would be your ARB days.
I'm not in town on the 1st. Banking on a
So-
hybrid situation on
Yeah,
that
so
day.
the 8th would be an off day, which I kind of think you'd want an off day. I
I
mean, you
think an
don't,
off day makes sense.
yeah, you don't want to come here in the morning and come back at night.
Not if you're far away.
Yeah.
Yeah, which maybe none of us are, but also that's also time away from work
Yeah.
in my brain.
Mhm.
Okay, so let's, how's the 8th sound for people? How's the date?
Should let the staff
Yeah.
check all the other elements. And
No, but it's a good.
You need a starting point.
Yeah, it's a good
So-
starting point.
So the 8th is in between meetings for us then?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, because it would be September 1st and 15th would be our regular hearings.
Would we want to say 6:30? 7? What's good for timing?
6 probably good.
6?
Okay, so I'll shoot for 6 PM on the 8th.
We'll just assume we'll need it for an hour.
I don't want to say 6 to 7:30, just in case.
That's a good idea.
Like a half an hour to present, chit chat, and then an hour to mingle and whatnot.
Right, half an hour for everyone to come in.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll start at 6:30.
Then present, and then there's another half an hour of chit chat and hanging out. Congratulations. All right, everyone go home now.
Don't go home, go to the bar where Peter's buying.
There we go.
Okay,
There
I'll
we
buy.
go.
Persuade me to do that, isn't it? Also? Teetotalers like you, you're a cheap date. Right? Seltzer water.
I'm sorry, my ignorance. What does teetotaler mean?
A teetotaler is someone who doesn't drink alcohol.
Ah,
And drinks a lot of tea.
there you go. Got it.
Actually, I don't drink any tea either.
No, it's just coffee.
Just water these days. Well, I found out I should put some lemon in there because apparently that's good for hydration. I didn't know that. Okay, so we've picked a prospective date, prospective time.
Mhm.
I think this will be good. Maybe we can even dress kind of nice. I don't know. We can think
I'm
about
in.
it. It's an awards, right? We don't get an
Yes,
Oscars.
It is awards night.
Just put on
Just-
a coat, put on a dress, have some fun. It's good.
We like to dress up.
Yeah, whenever you feel comfortable. right.
Yeah, I think if we make it feel special, everyone else will make it feel special.
Because I mean, to be honest, like it is a thing. It's like of all the projects that went through Palo Alto, these are the 8 that were deemed worth recognizing. I mean, this is an event. It's maybe not the Oscars, but it's not nothing. So let's treat it like it's not nothing.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So now I think maybe we can go back to deciding who is the last item is just deciding who gets what project.
Yeah, I think who gets what and then what we're gonna ask of the architects.
Right. Oh, wait, and one more thing for the plaque
Mhm.
item, who is that getting assigned to? Is that something that
You mean
we,
certificate?
The,
Not
yeah,
Oh,
we're
sorry.
doing the paper
the paper
certificate,
certificate? I
a
should-
fancy paper certificate with a logo and a mayor's signature.
There we go.
That will be
is that a
Medina and I,
Medina
yes.
task
There's
item?
gotta be something you guys can cover that. pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Do we have one already? Do we have like a template for certificates?
There's gotta be one.
Check with city clerk's office.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Special
Why don't you loop it past Osmo, past the chair
Yeah,
before you finalize it?
okay.
Yeah, we can get you guys to, yeah, sort of finalize
Okay,
the
yeah.
design.
We can
Any one
make
of us-
comments
any
about
one
the
of us would be fine.
kerning, spacing.
Okay, all right, so let's go through each project. Did folks get a chance to go through the projects before now? Otherwise, maybe Jody can pull it up on our screen again and we can go through and assign.
And I do have, I think I was trying to find my past presentations. I think I have, let's see if I can share. Oh, here we go. So this was the junior museum, which I think David definitely had an affinity for, so.
That came out so nice.
It's so cool.
And then we had the fire station.
I think I remember David also really liking this one.
And these two are not
Loved
so
it.
far from each other,
It's
so.
a great building.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go through all of them really quick and then people can think
Um,
about what they want.
So 3223 Hanover is a research park with sort of the butterfly roofs.
I think I really liked this one. I remember liking this one.
And
That's the one.
then
Oh, I'm into that one.
All right.
I know the
Awesome.
rabbi. I'm in.
Yay.
okay.
I really like
Yeah.
this one
So the
too.
synagogue, yep.
Yep,
It's kind of
it's
cool.
Clement. It's wonderful. Yeah.
And then Yeah,
think
375
Peter-
University. Is this
one you, Peter?
is this
I was-
Roxy or?
He's got my name here. I was gonna do the fire station and then Forest Avenue was the housing one.
Okay, so university's up for
What about
grabs.
this one? Okay, so okay. That one's open.
This is a nice building. This is fun.
And then we had
There's
611 Cowper.
I guess,
You wanted that one, didn't you?
I think I got that one, yeah.
You and I were really pushing for this one.
You were,
Okay.
yes.
And then 701 Welch.
Honorable mention. I remember
Yes.
pushing for this one.
Alex.
Yeah,
And
I think,
I did too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this was for more the sort of human scale
Right, it
pieces
was.
that it
How are you
has.
gonna make a
Yeah.
model of
Child.
There's
this?
some nice moments on the ground level.
And then the 430 Forest.
This one made it, huh?
I'm happy to.
Yes,
tackle
this is the one that we-
residential anything, So.
This is
Okay.
the one that we added at the end because we realized
Didn't
it
have it.
hadn't been included initially just from a computer error.
Oh, right.
And we also were happy to find a residential project as well.
I know the architect for this
You want to take that one, Peter?
Okay, so
one. I lunch with my staff one day. Merging offices for a fun lunch and just went on and on about modern architecture. Everything has to be modern architecture. capital M modern.
Okay, so there is, so I have two for Peter.
let's see, I had, whoops, is it gonna, there we go. Okay, so I have David for this one, Peter for the fire station. Osma, you wanted this one,
Mhm.
Kendra.
Yep.
I can take this one.
Okay. And then
Cowper Street.
David
You want Cowper Street,
for
David?
Cowper.
Mhm.
And then, so the hospital
So you
needs
also-
somebody.
Yeah, I can take that one.
Okay. And then Peter was going to do the housing project.
Okay, so
everybody has
Peter's,
like one or two.
Perfect.
Peter's got two, I have two,
David's
David has
got
two,
two, yep.
and then you
We've
guys
each
have
got one.
one each.
Awesome.
All right, so let's also set a timeline for this. So the first thing is we need to set out notices to award winners. So I think there is a template email from 5 years or 7 years ago. That was like we'll have to dig that up. And so maybe what we'll do is we'll dig that up. I'll send it out to everybody. And
That
then,
might be something that you probably just wanted to, if you're
Rewrite.
able to. Yeah.
okay, all right, I'll create a template email.
I mean,
Um,
just, I can, maybe I can jot some stuff down just as far as like, every 5 years we do awards, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, okay,
So
so we'll work together.
There are two levels of awards. There's a kind of a regular out of the 6, and then there are 2 honorable mentions.
Mhm.
Do we put it down? You received an honorable mention
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
for, okay.
And are these awards in order, or is it just they all just sort of?
No, they're all,
Just check.
they're all same level.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had thought about categories and then we let them
You
go.
missed quite a discussion, Kendra.
Discussions over 4 meetings.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
Endless discussions, that is.
So with the notice to the award winners, will that be also sending out the requirements and the timing and all of that information? Like, please prepare a 24x36 board that'll be displayed in the lobby. If you have any models here, and here's your contact person, and here's their
And your
information.
contact person, right?
yeah, that sounds good.
And
So
who-
maybe we'll get the date finalized first before we send these out.
Yeah.
Can
I
always
mean,
do
I
a
think for the
follow-up.
ceremony, we probably would just say early September.
Okay, yeah, we can follow up with
Yeah,
that later.
yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so note.
But we can say, maybe the due date for the information is late August.
Mhm.
Um,
And then on each of these emails, we want to make sure we CC Jody.
Mhm. Medina.
So the first email will be sent out by Asma, right? You as the chair.
I'll send
To
one
everybody?
to this group. That's the template. And then I think from there, maybe you'll take it and send it to the architect. And then we probably also have the architect's contact somewhere, right? We have to find it
Yes.
in the records.
I can
A
find
personal phone call to the 2 on my list.
Mhm.
Speak to the principal and both just to make sure that we're connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Phone call is a good
I
idea.
want to call Roxy Rapp.
Okay.
He's the developer.
Okay.
The architect was a guy from Portland
Oh, wow.
who called Roxy first. Roxy really wants the award.
Uh,
Really pleased to get it.
Oh, yes.
He'll really help you a lot.
Oh, yes,
Okay,
they will,
then-
they probably probably come down for that, yeah.
Interesting.
You talked to me?
When they presented to us.
Oh, okay,
Roxy-
yeah.
Roxy sort of marched in.
Oh, Roxy was there.
But I'll make sure and get you names and
We'll try to find contact, because I don't know who to contact the folks on
yeah,
my
I'll have
side.
to, tell you who the architect is.
I don't know who my architect is, but I know how to find him. So.
Yeah, I think I've
So,
also found their
what-
website and stuff.
Would we do
Easy.
that? How is the timing gonna work? I mean, in other words, should we agree upon a date to call these people?
Yeah, like
Rather
maybe in the
than a
next 2
specific
weeks,
date?
next week, 2 weeks.
Yeah, I need a day or two to pull together the template. But yeah, either this week or next is when we should be contacting them. Yeah.
How about when you send the email, you give us a date to contact them by or something like that, so we can follow your instructions.
Yeah. I mean, just maybe a week after I send it kind of thing. You know,
Okay, so today is the 13th. So we'll try to send these notices out no later than the 27th. And then we
Well,
give
and I
them a
think
month.
the personal phone call is definitely warranted.
It's a good way to go. And then it should be followed up with an email.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
the email and the phone call is the best way to do it. Because
This week or next.
Yeah, because the
And
email
then-
has all the details about us, what we're asking for. And I think the other part of what we're asking for, if we want to do the 24 by 36 display is good. But I think we want to use the TVs as well. And a lot of the architects hopefully have the high quality images or renderings or something.
Now put it
So.
together.
I think we would need to know what like pixel count for that, like what they're using
Yep.
for those
There's somebody in
images.
charge of that, right? One person who does the designing on this, is she the person? I think it's a woman
You're talking about just the TVs,
running who designs the whole display.
I'll have to find out. I'm sure it's our public information people, but yeah, I'll have to find out. Unless you know, Mandina, for the TVs.
Yeah.
Is it Megan?
Microsoft.
Yeah.
So for the board display there, do we need to ask them, it need to be horizontal or vertical or?
Yeah,
doesn't-
I think we should choose. I think vertical makes sense.
Then
The
if-
one argument I would make is that the TVs are horizontal.
Yeah, right.
Mm,
And if they
Okay.
did want to just submit one and one and call it a day.
That's
what they
true.
need to make, So
Okay, I was only thinking vertical because of space,
I agree, but
but
TVs are.
I'm fine with horizontal.
You're saying vertical for the display? in the
Vertical
digital
board,
Or the board?
the board. But there's a good point that if we just made them both landscape, then,
I think
Save
it's
some
better
time for the-
landscape
okay,
too.
let's do landscape. So we'll have them send those by the end of July.
Mhm.
Send those to us. The board, so that gives us a couple weeks to print and set up. I'm assuming we're printing them. This is a good question.
No,
They're gonna print them and they're gonna, okay, so we,
What? You just to display in the lobby.
yeah,
Well, they would
I
have
think
to
they'll
follow.
provide.
They
the
would do
Yeah,
board.
that?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think they
Yeah.
need to walk in with their board. Yeah.
okay.
So they need to get it to us, so.
Yeah, and that's why I was-
Oregon has
that's
to
why I
put
was
it
saying-
together, yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was saying late August. I mean, they can mail it in if they need to or however they want to do it.
Okay, so late August is when they would
I'm
send
sure
the
we're
boards
gonna
in.
find that
Yeah.
the Oregon people
Say mid-August,
nice
let's give them a
beautiful
buffer.
Rendering or whatever.
Maybe
Photographs
you
of
wanna
the
Put together a list of, say, maximum 10 images, horizontal format with DPI count or whatever, that are a digital thing that we put into a PowerPoint, of which at least one should be a floor plan or something like that.
You're talking about the screen one?
I'm just saying when you want to ask somebody to make a presentation, you have to give them some sort of background to what you want to do. And then we also want them to produce some physical thing on a board and an easel. And then that's what we want to model too.
My tendency would
Say it
be
that way.
say to them, they know their project, best way of presenting it,
So we can
To
say
let
you
them
have a-
choose.
You have a 2 square foot space,
give them
put
the,
a vertical stand for people to look at while standing. Anything you want.
I would leave it up to them. They're
And
going to
if you have
choose
a-
their
Say
primary.
10 images for each winner flashing through a PowerPoint.
Oh, if you're
beside
talking
us.
about the
Well,
the
both.
images on the.
Both.
That's one, we should talk about them separately because I think we're getting confused.
Think so too.
So for the physical part, we've been talking about having a 24 by 36 landscape, just one board per
Mhm.
architect. And then if they have a model, then that's welcome.
Yes. Leave it up to them to make that presentation because, that's part of their creativity as well.
And we'll explain that it'll be in this lobby for the month of September.
Get a standardized easel to put them on.
Yes, I'm sure they
At
have them.
least a 5 easel. It'll look really scrappy if everybody's got the thing.
Their own thing, yeah.
Do we already have easels
I
somewhere?
think we
in-
do. I mean,
In the
I've seen
city?
displays.
We have 8 easels.
Yeah, we can get the.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just scrounge a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll have to scrounge a little bit for 8 of them, but
So, yes, it's just a
Can still
hardcore
sell
board.
that.
For that
sheet or
dimension,
something,
yeah.
Then a stand for a model in front of it.
Should we also maybe liaise with, isn't there a arts commission that, I wonder if since this is like kind of an installation,
They have supplies or?
yeah, maybe they'll, like, I just don't want to, I want to make sure they don't already have an installation plan for the month of September in the lobby of City Hall.
yeah, I mean, those are things we definitely need to check out.
So the Public Art Commission, we can probably contact them this week. and
Yeah,
see if they're okay with
I
that.
know at least I can talk to her.
Okay.
And I have to talk to Megan. I mean, there's a different set of people that are running the TVs, so.
Okay.
And for the photos they wanted to include it in their presentation, shall we ask them to focus on more about the exterior since the board review seems more about the exterior side?
That's a good point.
So when we say presentation, are we saying that there will be a presentation?
Oh, no, I mean, something display on the TV.
Oh, so this is
or-
the TV part.
yeah.
Okay, let's move to the TV part now.
Or maybe
It's
it's the images they used on the board. Yeah, just something that is more on the exterior side instead of, I don't know.
I think they're going to, we'll
They-
find out that they'll choose their own best images
Right.
and what that explains their project the best they can,
Okay.
Yes,
They
I
include
think
some-
exteriors are important, but if they had a major space on the
Right.
inside,
Mhm.
they might definitely. So for the junior museum, for example, which I haven't been in,
Oh, my kids.
I'm
kids
sure
love
that the
it.
lobby aspect of that is
Uh-huh.
important. I'm also sure that the landscape, exterior landscape is kind of important. Because they have courtyards and they have animals and cages and.
Yeah, right. The thing why I asked is because like for the retail thing, maybe there's not too much exterior images they can show,
Exactly, yeah.
so, right, so.
They got one
Right.
shot.
Yeah,
That's
right.
it.
So we should be okay.
good
if
point.
They,
That building is beautifully detailed. That has
Yeah.
some Close-ups.
There you go.
Wonderful.
yeah, that works too.
Yeah.
I do think it's good that, we're talking about the ARB. The ARB does review exteriors, including landscape. And so we definitely want to tell the architects, that's our focus. But
Yeah.
I think if they wanted to include, 1 or 2 other items, we're not going to
Sure.
stop that.
So the requirements for the digital submission would be just JPEGs? Or do we want it in PowerPoint format?
My advice is that we collect digital JPEGs or TIFFs, something like that. We have to put them into a PowerPoint with our own graphics, ARB award winner
cohesive.
format or something, so it has a consistency. So
Okay,
we're
so like
gonna
a
have to make
border.
PowerPoint out of their imagery.
This
Okay.
is for the digital display we're talking about. That's how that would
For
work.
anything you put on the website or anything in our modern world where you want to display images. And I would recommend, say, a maximum of 10 images, a minimum of 3.
Okay.
And I'd recommend that they pick their money shot.
Sure,
Mhm.
absolutely.
So they should have this one that really, this is the one they think best captures the whole thing.
Mhm.
And that's what we use then
Uh-huh.
Okay.
at a council meeting. You might just, while the board's going on, you have this sort of every 10 seconds and one flashes by. And
Any
you
other
might leave it
thoughts?
up to the architects, but it's nice to have one plan or site plan or something perhaps, but.
That's kind of depending on
Let them
privacy.
choose if
If they
really
wanna
wanna-
show that.
If they want to coordinate something with a site plan as a background,
Yeah, it's up to them.
It's up to them.
it's up to them to do
Okay,
the best creativity they can offer. And they know their project inside and out.
Yeah.
So if an interior kind of view, like the junior museum, for example, definitely. That they're going to want to put it together. But I think that we need some coordination with a graphics person for the big board here. What's the best way to present something like this, a series of building shots?
I don't know if we have any special expertise. We just have, there's a person that controls the TVs and I mean, they can sort of tell us maybe.
One of the five of us needs to make this PowerPoint presentation.
So, okay, so
The
yeah,
graphics and stuff.
maybe it is a
We've done
PowerPoint,
that
but
kind of thing before.
it's
And then
gonna float on
that
the
file,
screen?
they take that file and run with it.
So I'm going to take back what I said earlier about the portrait versus landscape. Then I think these are detached enough. If it's just a series of images and we are going to do the digital PowerPoint, let them do their presentation portrait mode. It's going to be easier to display, and let the digital one be a separate, distinct thing based on JPEGs in a PowerPoint format. Is that what I'm understanding?
I don't know.
I think they will be separate things.
Okay.
Yeah, they have to.
The board
Yeah.
itself is definitely more horizontal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, question is,
That is the display in the lobby here.
Well, you could take the money shot, the one image, and put that
Right.
on your board and let that.
Yeah.
Stand
Be its
for
thing.
itself.
Yep. Okay.
and that's it on your board?
Well,
Just
whatever
the
they
one.
want. It's up to them.
Sure.
Whoever sells it together. Yeah, if I were choosing, I would just.
That's probably not what I would do, but I guess that's what different people are. I mean, we could also give them an option between landscape and portrait. There's something nice about having it be standard, but different projects maybe shine
Differently.
with different formats.
Definitely agree. They do.
Okay,
Okay. Give them the freedom.
all right.
So
I think we've
are we
thought about
changing-
everything.
Are we doing the board itself? We're saying it's vertical, or are we going to say it's keep it,
Either way.
We're gonna
either
give
way.
them the option.
give them the option?
Yeah, so
Yes.
yeah, if we just say 24 by 36, I think that's a reasonable.
Yeah, that's a good
parameters.
size, and then potentially the people with the model might want to do portrait, and the people without a model might want to do landscape.
Mhm.
Okay.
So be sure what the standard is, a 24 by 36 board and a model.
The model's not required.
Model,
I didn't say required, I just said we'd like you to present a board and a model. And then maybe they
Well,
do, maybe they don't, but at least.
leave it
ask
up to
it.
them
But-
on the
but if you say
model.
it's optional, then you're not gonna get it.
That's true. We can highly encourage,
A model or something physical that represents your
but
project.
they need their own pedestal for the model. That's the only
Mhm.
thing. I don't know that we have.
I think we'd probably just have to have a table or something like that.
Mhm.
No, if we can, we'll find somewhere to get 8 cardboard boxes.
Yeah.
Maybe the Public Art Commission has something in their storage.
No, I think
There's gotta be.
it's on us to produce that stuff.
There's that
Just
table
like
over
that
there.
little Table gets a few of those,
Mhm.
drape a cloth over recycling bins. I mean, you just figure it out.
I don't know about
Creative.
recycling bins, but sure.
That's
Okay,
right.
so
Bunch of
we're
those
doing,
boxes.
yeah, we're doing a bunch of stuff because we're doing a web page. I mean, someone's got to design the web page too. And I mean, we can do the programming. I don't know if you want more of the control of the format.
So I recommend that we produce a PowerPoint with all the images, with the consistent graphics for the whole thing, and just continuously scrolls through all the images and the graphics. And then we can make the same thing with only one image for each project. So it scrolls through 8, and that's what you put on the website.
I agree with that. Let me make a suggestion is when they do their poster board, the 24 by 36, have them send us that image. And that's the image for their project on the website.
That's right. That's their
And then
money
they've got
shot.
their full control over it and they've got exactly what they want.
Exactly.
So.
So when somebody clicks that tab on the city
Right.
website, they just go through this 8 images that scroll through.
Right.
And you can go back or forward. if you-
Right. And that's it. And they've got all the information. They've got full control over
Yeah,
what
and
they
it's just a
display.
single file that the city uploads for a chunk of time. And it's
Right.
It doesn't need to be anything more.
So that's different from getting the PowerPoint with 3 to 10 images.
Yeah, that would be, well, probably the same graphics, but that's a larger PowerPoint that you show on City Hall here, because here you can do 100 images or 50 images here.
Right.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
for the TV, they're all strung together, and on the web page, they're more individual.
I think for the things that live on in perpetuity, like if it was me, I'd want more control over what's displayed in my name. Right. So I think by allowing the architect to have their image that's going to get printed is the same image that's going to be used on the website, they can design it exactly how they want it. They get the one shot.
As long as I understand, we're gonna have, frame or a logo on the bottom,
Yeah.
the City of Palo Alto Architecture Review Board or something,
100%.
but we won't change the image otherwise and won't add.
So
Yeah, the
do you-
website's a little, we have to work with whoever works on the website. I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
the-
that's,
Just find out
Medina-
what format do they want it.
I mean,
Medina.
Medina or, I mean, we've got people in the department that do web pages. It's just, the programming part I can handle. It's the, how do you want it to look? I just need an idea.
So do
So-
you from
I can
the,
help sketch up some stuff. If that's helpful. I don't know.
Yeah, and some verbiage or something to go with it and that sort of thing. So,
we taken from the email template? Yeah, and I guess it'll be connected to our ARB page on the city website. So it'll be like agendas, minutes, award winners.
yeah.
2020 award winners. That's the one.
Well, but the idea is to have a banner on the homepage so that it's really publicized.
I probably initially,
Yeah, for the
Yeah.
first chunk of
Yeah.
time, that's a big deal, but
Yeah.
that's what you want these architects to have an incentive to do this. This is really great publicity.
Yeah.
That's why they're gonna come down to our cocktail party.
Exactly.
Or
And dress nicely.
Dressed up in tuxedos.
okay.
Okay. Anything else on this?
Good.
Are we good? Should we move on?
I think I'll write up some notes,
I've got notes too.
summarizing and yeah,
Awesome.
sounds good.
Okay, thanks. Let's go on.
So the very first thing, actually, just to take one step back, is that you send us all the sort of contact information as a priority so that we could really start doing that as soon as possible. huh?
Yes, I will, Chair Thompson and I will get you an email template and I'll get you some contact information so that you can start having that conversation. Yeah, that'll be my first thing to do.
Maybe you'll run it by Peter since he might have alternative contacts outside of the architect.
I don't know that many people.
Well, I think, this is, we've already made all of the decisions. And so I'm just trying to think of Brown Act and those sorts of things, but there's no decision being made other than, how to put on a party. So I think you guys emailing each other at this point is fine on this particular project, on this particular awards ceremony.
That would be good. Maybe run it by Albert.
Yeah, I can double check with the attorney's office, but I think, it's a party. It's not you're not approving a building, so it's a little bit different.
Okay, all right, let's keep going. So our next item is ARB bylaws and council handbook. And Jody, do you want to talk to this a little bit? I can also read.
Yes and no. So here, I can give some short backgrounds. The really short background is, as you can see, where did I have it? Okay, so this is more about the annual reports but then there's also the, let's see, sorry, let me go to the discussion. So we need to talk about term dates. I'm on packet page 7. So I'm just reading the staff report itself, which I tried to keep short because there's a lot going on right now. But number 1 on packet page 7 there is talking about term start dates and limits, should match the handbook. And so, and then council did say what maybe is not fully in the handbook is that the ARB can serve a maximum of 3 terms. And so, which ends up equaling 9 years total.
Yeah, it says 3 3-year terms. I
Yeah.
did see some terms were extended on the website. potentially.
There shouldn't be, I believe, Kendra's serving the rest of Grace's term. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's why hers is 2 years.
Okay.
But otherwise it should be pretty standard. And
So she's doing that for just that piece and then she gets 2 full terms after that?
if
Two
reappointed,
three-year-
if reappointed, yes.
If
If they
reappointed.
don't kick me
Mm-hmm.
out.
So I think we need to be careful because the handbook referenced here is out of date. This is November 2020 is the incorrect one. The one on the website, as far as I can tell, is still incorrect. The council went back and revisited this in June of 2021, passed a new set of things which would pertain to how long ARB members can serve. And I don't think there's ever been a really clear explanation of what that is.
But there is no new handbook, which is, yeah, part of my consternation.
They
But
kind of-
there is a
they made
vote.
motion, They voted on it.
Yeah.
And when I pressed council members on it, they just said, Peter, don't rock the boat. The clerk's office is way too busy to deal with something like this now. But now it's been a year and a half. I say all this because for me, when I was reappointed, I'm on my 3rd term. The initial thing said 2 terms maximum. And then they went back and said, no, we want you to stay on the board. So we'll make it 2 terms plus 1 more if you're in this window of time before our rule was in effect. Now we're saying it's 3 terms for ARB members.
The motion is three
Three terms.
terms for, I think it's ARB and HRB is what the motion
They
read.
were concerned that it's harder to get real architects on the board and they want to keep us here, basically.
Yeah.
But I'm frustrated that it's never really been made clear as far as I can tell, publicly in the record kind of thing. If really, I don't remember if it's 2 terms now or if it was 2 terms for anybody who's 3 terms if you're already in the pipeline.
No, it is 3 terms for anyone. So there is a motion out in the world that definitely says that. What there is not is a cleaned up handbook.
So we would incorporate this 3-term policy into the cleaned up handbook.
No, you don't have, only
don't have to
only
do that.
council has control over
They
the
will do that.
handbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we have control over is the bylaws and the procedures.
So we're trying to sync our bylaws with the handbook that hasn't been published yet.
Yeah.
Basically.
But we're taking into consideration the motion, so.
So this is just for discussion, right? We're not making any motions.
Yes, and this is not, yeah, this is discussion. We'll have to agendize the formal changes.
Okay. And then there's also the timing of the chair and the vice chair elections.
Yes, so we had, when you read the bylaws, I mean, this is the terms for members have changed at least 2 or 3 times, which is why I can't remember them. But we do want to sync up. Everyone is December right now. December 15th is when the terms end. And so in the current bylaws, we were to vote for chair and vice chair before new people came on. That's how it's written. But I know last time we had this discussion, we felt like maybe that was not the best approach. Maybe we wanted to vote for a chair after the new people came on. And so that's a discussion.
So by voting for the chair before the new people came on, you're ensuring that the chair is someone who actually has experience.
True.
So
was-
I wouldn't be mad at that.
So I'll give you a political background on this because this was a real fight with the council. A few things you've really seen them go at each other on. When they were reappointing, so when you got reappointed, you had basically last cycle. Because I waded into it because we didn't have enough members. So I pushed really hard to get us reappointed. So we had continuity with our board. Osman was set to be the
100%.
chair and
Yeah.
if she wasn't reappointed, that was a ridiculous situation.
Right.
A strong minority of the council felt very strongly that a new board should appoint their own chair. You shouldn't have an outgoing board appoint the chair for a new board. That's essentially putting the old board members sort of into the future, putting their thumbprint on the scale. And so they had quite a debate about that. They lost the vote. Osman and Grace Lee got reappointed.
Yeah.
But I think we should be aware that the council at the time had a strong minority of people pushing hard not to do it that way. In other words, the idea was that an active board should appoint their officers at the beginning of each term. So I'm just putting that out there as
Yeah,
a piece
yeah,
of
no,
political
no.
information that we should be aware of.
Absolutely.
Right, but we could pretty much decide on our own that we want one or another process here. Seems to me that the best way is to get all of the people here to be involved in that. And accept that. Now, your experience, two of you, is less as to what our particular experiences are. But nonetheless, I think you should be included in this decision-making process. No matter what the council is kind of thinking about that. It's a democratic process if we are all involved. in that
Yeah, I
decision.
think it's just good background information for sure.
Yeah, so I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
As deference to
Yeah.
Tom Dubois, who really felt strong about it.
Yeah.
Over the years, gotten to know him well. So I'm just,
Uh-huh.
that's his opinion, basically.
Yeah.
So my opinion is that having the board at the end of the year choose next year's members is a very sensible thing to do.
At the
Been
end
with
of
each
the
other
year,
for a year, you have a very good sense of who's
By
going to
then,
be going forward.
going
right?
forward.
And a person who just came onto the board is pretty hard pressed to make a good decision. I remember when I first joined the board, Robert Guier was up for chair,
Mhm.
first or second meeting I was on the board, and I'm like, well, I don't know.
Right.
Yes, no, whatever.
Yeah.
So you just do what everybody else is doing. But that's not really a good way to do things.
Yeah, it's almost like there's the forced concept that someone with experience gets put into place, and then there's sort of the appearance that we have a choice. But like you said, if I had to vote for a chair on my first day, I'd probably look to who's been here before and been like, well, who are you guys voting for? I'll vote for them too, right? It's sort of an illusion of a democracy, and to some extent.
That's
that-
true.
So
That's true.
I'm not saying I have a strong opinion one way or the other. I'm still
Yeah, no,
honestly
that's very
debating it in my
true.
head, but it's,
Well, I
I
think
agree with Peter's sentiment. that-
it's good for the outgoing board to put their
Mhm.
thumb on the scale a little bit going forward. That's what ensures continuity.
Mm.
And that's not a bad thing, I don't believe.
I would also, in that same vein, I would also, to support that, say that, when you have someone with experience, it's not necessarily tipping the scales. Like you say thumb on the scale, and I'm not, I think that sort of, that comment almost rubs you the wrong way because it seems like you're influencing. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just providing experience and making sure that there's,
Well,
like you said, continuity.
You're
as
putting your,
opposed to-
that's exactly the point. The
Right.
council's a political body.
Right,
This was a political decision for them.
yes,
Okay. For us, I'd like to think that we're not political.
yes,
And our decisions are
Yes.
based on experience and expertise and design acumen.
100%,
So
Good
it
point.
really isn't relevant to whether you're likely to approve a development or be
right,
pro-growth or anti-growth.
right.
Yes, certainly not.
Well, and to provide some continuity for the people that are applying. If you have a full new board and all of a sudden everything's totally different every 2 or 3 years, you're going to make the people that are applying in Palo Alto crazy. These projects take 5 years sometimes. And if they're going through 3 different architectural review boards in a 6-year span or something, it's crazy
Yeah.
making for the people who are applying. They have no idea what the rules are if it's constantly changing. So to again, further support your sentiments. Yeah, makes sense to me.
I'm all for having some very strong protocol of when you choose to chair that the public can expect how it goes and to have some way to have experienced board members part of making that decision
Yeah,
going forward.
I agree.
So that puts us in a sort of in-between position at this point as to.
No, I guess what I'm hearing is that the terms currently end December 15th. And so, if we want the prior board to be making the chair and vice chair decisions as it's currently written in the bylaws as well. So it makes a lot of sense from that reasoning as well. It's just a matter of moving it from October to early December so that, the chair can normally have that whole year. And then you start with a new chair and you start with a new board kind of all at the same time after December 15th.
But in our
So-
case, we were supposed to have changed chairs and vice chairs in January, right?
For this particular year, yes, we,
Except for
well,
the fact that,
I
yeah,
mean, we really, if we were doing it this way, we should have changed in early December.
Right.
But we had we had pandemic and we had extra turmoil if we only had 3 board members too.
We only had 3
So-
board members back then.
So,
We probably still could have done it though, right?
how is this going to work if our boards are not in the same sequence, a 3-year sequence together.
This is, so everybody's December, but yes, they're different years.
What happens when we get to a year when,
I mean, that's part of what keeps the continuity. Chair and vice chair is just voted on every year.
Mhm.
It doesn't, yeah, the end date of your term is not
It's
taken
not
into
pending,
account.
yeah.
Yeah.
That position.
Well, the past 3, we've done 1.5 stints.
I don't
For-
remember when
for
I became
myself and for
chair.
you. I do.
Because you were taking over for Wynn when she had to
yes,
leave.
right, you filled in at that point.
And that's why maybe yours was 1.5 years. And then I don't remember when I became chair,
had
but it
more
feels like a really long time ago.
No,
Feels like a
it's
gazillion
been
years
the, no, I think you, I'm pretty sure you were December of, but it's been December,
20
it's been 1.5 years.
December 2020 or 2019. I don't remember.
No, 1.5 years,
Year and a half.
whatever
Okay,
year,
2020.
whatever 1.5 years is, I can't. Yeah,
We'll have to go back and look, but yes. But anyway, we basically need to do elections soon, right? Because we're late on this one. But then the question is like, would we redo it again in December or would we keep it going for 1.5 years again?
So when they put together this handbook, there was quite a bit of talk at the time that they were going to stipulate boards and commissions would choose chairs in June. The rationale behind that, I believe, was that the council doesn't always get around to appointing new board members at the end of the year. And that's exactly what happened with you and Grace. And that got pushed into February. That's when I waded in and made a stink because it's really bad for the ARB board to have a chair who's not even been reappointed. Doesn't work. But what they were saying, let's put the chair selections halfway out of cycle, out of sync, so that if the council takes a long time, it doesn't matter.
well, but I think if we're voting on chairs before the appointments. Oh, but if they, okay, if they don't get
We
reappointed.
were in this funny situation, and so and that will happen again, I'm sure, at some point or another. I'm not sure how much you can anticipate all of this. And we feel like we flex just fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose if you get voted chair and then don't get reappointed, which seems rare, but it could
It
happen.
could happen because you might
I mean, then you just
get
have,
expired. Maybe it's the end of, I don't know.
well, if
Anything
it was
happens.
the end of your 9 years, then we would know better.
Yeah.
Not to vote you in as chair.
Right.
But
Or vice chair.
yeah. But I mean, if you're, if this was your first term and now you're becoming chair or even your second term, then we know at least you have a chance of getting reappointed. And if
Right.
you, on the slim chance that you don't get reappointed, then we just do another election.
I mean, it's flexible enough that it's not critical.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
it's really to Kendra's point that the more you can make it for applicants really transparent and predictable, the better we're seen as being really impartial, apolitical, and really serving the public. And I feel strongly that we want that reputation.
Agreed.
Don't want to be
Yes.
seen, don't want to be seen
I
as
do too.
being pawns of the political machinations going on with the council.
Right.
Who they're going to reappoint is going to affect whether Castilla gets approved. I don't
Agreed.
want to go there for anything.
Agreed.
So
We're an apolitical party. It should remain that way.
So are we doing chair elections on Thursday?
I do have them agendized for Thursday. I just did that because, noticing, I have to do noticing 2 weeks ahead and that sort of thing, but that's up to you, the board, to ultimately decide if you want to carry on with that item or not, or how you want to do that. I mean, I think we should do something, the fact that, because you've been chair for 1.5 years. I think David's been less because you're finishing out Grace's sort of vice chair term.
No.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
Grace left,
Because Grace
we
was vice
appointed
chair.
you vice
Oh,
chair.
the vice chair, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So your term's been, you
Yeah.
haven't had the 1.5 years, but
No,
but
no,
but
only a half
Chair
acre.
Thompson
Yeah.
has.
Is
So
there a
I do
maximum
think-
limitation?
It's
think
normally
so.
yearly. So
But you can just reappoint the same chair over and over again.
yeah,
Okay.
it's very rare that happens.
that they get reappointed?
It is rare.
And I think the
Yeah.
first time I can remember it ever happening was when we reappointed Win Firth.
Hmm.
She'd been chair for a year. And I pushed that she should stay another half a year.
Right.
She had already announced that she was leaving
leaving.
halfway through the year.
Got it. Okay,
Mhm.
Yeah, I think when there's sort of other factors,
cycles,
you
yeah.
know, then we've
got it.
reappointed
I can
people.
put out there my spin on the whole thing, which is that I believe you shouldn't serve as chair until you've been reappointed to the board.
Mhm.
You earned the confidence of the council to get appointed twice.
Agree.
That just seems to fit really well.
I agree
In the
too.
case of Win taking over and stuff, by the timing the way we did, Osmo was just reappointed when she became chair. And that gives her a lot of credibility with the
Mhm.
council.
Mhm.
And they can't question you if they just reappointed you.
Good point.
You know, so the timing was staggered a little bit to make all that work.
Right.
And I think that's, again, it keep coming back to the same idea. We want to be seen as being impartial, apolitical,
Mhm.
not
And
beholden to the
experienced.
council.
And stable, yeah.
Yeah.
And so the more we can get that kind of internal protocol, you can't put that in the bylaws, of course. but
Agreed.
To me,
Yeah.
I've always felt that that's a good policy to try to keep on the board.
Good.
I've always felt that at the end of the years, when we should have this outgoing report, an annual report to the council that the ARB presents to the council. And so the outgoing chair has to take the responsibility of getting that report together. And then they make that presentation they've done. That's the end of their term.
Mhm.
They do it, and that's when we hand it over. At the last meeting of the year, we have an election for the new chair, who then takes over at the first meeting of the next year.
Mhm.
That year runs, they run that report to the council at the end of the year. That's something that's only been recent since Win first started the first time and dumped it on me. And then we now have this annual work packet, which kind of duplicates that anyway, so
So
we
in
can
terms
debate
of,
whether you
plan.
need to do it anyway.
Well, and
timing,
that goes
yeah.
into item number 3, but let's finish.
yeah, in terms
to-
of timing, actually, if a person who is chair for a year and a half, that's a reasonable time for somebody to put a report together, you know.
Well, that's my second thought, is that a year is maybe not a long enough term, really.
Mhm.
That's why I guess I'm asking like the reappointment. If it's, I guess the question I have is the reappointment allowed? Like, for example, on Thursday, could we reappoint Osma as chair, or would it really come down to one of you two, right? Because the experience is there and we have to change, or is it? I guess
We
it's
can
like,
do anything we like.
okay, fair.
And if the bylaws just stipulate that we have to choose a chair.
Okay,
You have to have a chair and a vice
Understood.
chair. And I don't think in the bylaw you want to tie our hands or any future
agreed,
body's hands.
agreed. Okay,
I'm just talking about policies that I think
right.
make for a strong body.
Yeah, I mean, I think with chair, that makes sense. I feel like with vice chair, I'm more okay. Because a term is long, 3 years is long.
Mhm.
And, you know, someone's been on the board for like less than 3 years. I feel like they could still be vice chair just because
Absolutely.
it's like a learning place.
You were vice chair for quite a while.
That's right. I was your vice chair for a
On
time.
purpose. I mean, I set it up that way.
Yeah.
One of the jobs of a chair is to bring on the next chair.
Right.
Very important. One of the jobs of a parent is to bring your kid up, right? That's what you do. If you want to ensure continuity, you have to do these things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why David has been vice chair for a while, right? Just so you have this.
Well, there were only 3 of us.
But
You didn't have a choice.
But that's been the other thing, is that it usually sort of gets passed around.
It
so
gets passed
everyone has an
around.
opportunity.
everybody should.
Okay.
have
Everyone has an
Yeah.
opportunity, yeah.
So like technically in a 5-year period, there would be 5 chairs, right?
Well, that's part of when you have it every year, everybody gets a chance to do it.
Yeah.
Which is important.
So that would sort of, if we went with the concept of like a chair has to be around for 3 years, that would, you know, you'd have to make sure it's, I don't know. I think even after 2 years is a lot of time. If you've been vice chair, it depends on, I guess, how the person feels and how the board feels. But
There's so many circumstances and things change and people come and go.
Just make
Yeah.
it flexible.
So either we elect a new chair or we keep Osmo in this responsible role until the beginning of the year. That's really the choice.
Yeah, I think the bylaws right now talk about annual elections. You know, we're a little bit off for pandemic reasons, and not having enough people kind of reasons. So it feels like we should have some sort of election, but
To add to that-
whether you reappoint the same people, I mean, that's totally up to you.
But to add to that, we had the problem of Grace leaving
Yeah.
and Alex terming out.
Yeah, no, so
Yeah,
there could
so-
be many good reasons to keep the same people, to have some stability for a little bit longer. You know, we're bringing on 2 brand new members.
Brand new members. we
Yeah,
wanna
I mean, because even Grace
them
and,
up.
yeah, Grace and,
Experience.
Grace had previous
She
experience.
did. Yeah.
So she really wasn't new
And
when
Alex
she
had
came back.
Huge deep previous experience.
Yeah,
But he termed out.
Mhm.
yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Are we allowed to openly talk about interest? Like, do you have interest in being chair? Do you have interest in being vice chair? Can we talk about this openly?
To some
Um,
degree each. Capability questions, I don't know. I'm not sure about myself a little bit, to be honest. But I think it's a challenge. It's a challenge I would like to try, and not more than one term for sure.
I think maybe we should, before we think of the situation today, we should try to think, what are we establishing into the future? What's our process going to be? So basically, do we present a chair at the end of the year or in June, in the middle of the year? What do we want it to be? And then we'll figure out how to get there.
yeah, I think, yeah, December, January, or June are the probably 3 likely choices.
In December, January are sort of equal to each other.
Yeah,
It's
they're
Yeah,
really-
I mean, I
But
think
one's
as
before and one's after, right? And so I would, right, one's before when you've got the old guard, right, in
Mhm.
place, and the other one's with everybody new. So I think that's sort of a older new is sort of that flip-flop question between December and January, if I'm understanding it correctly.
But I think as you were saying, that the new people are just sort of going to
Do
vote
whatever
with the
other
old people many
exactly.
times. Yeah.
So really the choice is December or
Or
June.
June.
Yeah.
So
I
the
think
city
so, yeah.
council elections are in November and new council members are seated first meeting in January. Isn't that correct, Jerry?
So yeah, continue your point.
So that makes it a more political thing. That's what caused this brouhaha last time, is that there have been elections. There was new people coming on board with a different perspective.
Yes, it's
So they wanted to get appointments made before there was a change on the council.
So if they elect in June,
So they,
you got
Right,
the
but
continuous
council-
city council. If you elect in December, you might have a new city council. Is that? the-
Council is December also. Well, they're actually December 31st,
So either way.
whereas we are December 15th.
it's odd. How'd that
I'm
ever
telling
happen?
you, these terms keep changing on
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah. So, the funny thing is actually the council itself has elected a new mayor out of a new member who had been mayor
Hmm.
how many times before? At least one time
I've
before,
first been the mayor twice before.
twice before. So he was extremely experienced,
He's served 2 terms.
but he was a new term for him
Mhm.
because there were 2
Well,
outgoing.
to me, it's, if you reappoint in December to take effect in January kind of thing, there's an obvious logical continuity to that. That it appeals to me, it makes sense, it's in sync with the city council having a change of their leadership and all of that. So I think that has some sensibility. What I'm pausing by is that it does leave it more vulnerable to a political issue. In the event that there's an election with the city council and there's a real sea change of council desires, they can then change who they reappoint, which might affect the makeup of our board. We're not insulated as much because.
I
we're in
don't think
sync.
it's an issue by issue thing I don't see the relationship there.
Yeah, why would they influence who we vote as chair?
Not that, but they can influence who's on the board.
Selected. They
So
vote for us,
if the
right?
chair's not
Yeah,
reappointed.
the Chair is not being reappointed.
The
Right.
big swing last time was that a different faction of city council members were elected. They weren't taking effect until later in the year. The ones who were currently seated wanted to vote for things like board members. And so they pushed that vote through and had the vote. Whereas if it had been the new council members instead, it might have been a different selection of people who would be appointed. Their thinking, or what the public sees, is that that's a political choice. Who they're going to put on the architecture board might affect whether these controversial projects gets approved or not.
So I think I actually remember, it's coming to me now. I remember what happened last time. So I think what happened last time is I had been vice chair but my term was about to end. And I think if my term had been renewed, I would have liked to have been considered for chair. And I think that's maybe what happened. I think at that time, we had kind of gone through the lit, like, I think you had been chair, Win had been chair, Alex had been chair. You were very new. I think,
I was very new.
or maybe, yeah, you were very new and I had been on for a while.
Sure.
And so we, as a board, decided to push the election until after the appointments. If I was getting reappointed, then we could vote. And then I could have my,
Because the
a
city
turn,
council didn't appoint you in fall like they were supposed to.
because they pushed back appointments.
They pushed back the appointments because some of them wanted to see more applicants.
Right.
I'm telling you,
Uh-huh.
they treat us more politically than we do. We're being naive not to think that happens. When you leave the appointments at the end of the year, you're vulnerable to that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Yeah.
your
So-
situation was one where it became a slightly.
So that's why we
political
pushed
issue.
it. That's why we were talking about pushing it until after the end date. Because if I had been appointed as chair and then my term ended, then we would have had to reappoint a new
And
chair.
we'd be doing
Blow up.
institutional damage to our board.
Yes.
Significant
correct.
damage. It
Yes,
would not be
it
very,
is,
very bad.
So that's an argument for having it after the end date
In June,
In
in
June.
June. Yeah,
just to make it,
The chair of the Federal
it's
Reserve.
not during a campaign season kind of thing.
Yeah.
right.
That's a good
The
idea.
Federal Reserve Chair in Washington is appointed on the years that are not the presidential election years.
For good reason.
That goes all the way back to Alexander Hamilton, but there's a wisdom there. There's a wisdom.
That's a very good point, Peter.
Okay.
So that would say we should just do this whole
June.
thing on a cycle of June to June.
Sounds good.
June to
Which
June.
means
Yeah.
we're on time.
We're on time. Yes, we're gonna do it on Thursday.
But I mean, there's arguments that go both ways.
Yeah, but I think
I mean,
that's.
this political thing is a pretty rare storm that just really happens.
Right, but I think that, I mean, as you said earlier, that this body really needs to stay non-political and it needs to be presented as non-political.
Absolutely.
And everything that we can do to insulate against it, I think is important and valid and worth
Yeah, I
pursuing.
mean, that's my opinion as well, but
Yep.
we have to be sure we all agree with that. I mean, some people would say, no, it's inherently a democracy is a political process. And so,
Well, I think we should keep it away from the council relationship at all.
agree.
At all costs here.
So the best way to do that, I believe, would be to keep our chair elections completely out of sync.
Okay.
Mhm.
June.
Okay, so we're gonna
Okay.
do it next week.
Straw poll, June?
Straw
June.
poll, June.
June.
Okay, then
I
I
see you
will,
raise
I
your
will
hand.
write up, I need to do an official report and notice hearing and all that good stuff, but which actually, let's see if no, I probably can't pull it together close enough for June, but we can at least verbalize at the 16th hearing, what we're proposing to do. And then I can do a true agendized item.
Well, I had a bunch
soon
of
after that.
things on the
For us
bylaws
to
that I
move?
wanna consider changing.
Yeah.
Well, we
Oh,
haven't
yeah. No,
finished
we're
that
just,
yet.
we're just talking chair
We're
right
just
now.
talking
There's
chair.
lots of other things. And there was you were talking about the annual reports, council's work plan versus the ARB's annual report. And I think I agree with you that, the outgoing chair sort of wrapping up their year as chair can do this annual report, but then it's a little bit off cycle with council's work plan. And so I don't know how we want to weave those two together or not.
I want to come back for 1 second, though. The council, one of the town takes a break in the summer. Would it make more sense to have a new chair start in the fall? September
Oh,
1st?
God.
I thought we
I
were
thought we just
divorcing
took a-
it from
took
the
a straw vote
council
here.
stuff.
No, but that's just the political perception that.
No, I mean, let's talk out this particular issue first for the moment. If writing up a report, I think could involve both the chair and the vice chair if they really work together, because they'll remind each other of things that they've forgotten. So I think it would be a good idea somehow if that relationship was the one responsible for the report. I remember what's her name?
When,
Win working on her report, you know, coming into planning all the several times and sitting in and writing up what it was in the end. It's a difficult thing to write up, you know, to put together. I remember reading one from PTC that was incredibly detailed in the items that were included in their year's worth of work, you know. So it's a summary sheet and a look forward kind of idea, but it's a lot of work. So I think two people could be responsible for it.
So the question was, is the work plan duplicate?
A duplicate of what?
What the annual report would say anyway? And is there a need to do the annual
You know, I
report
just,
if the
annual-
work plan, if the work plan already
Are
has
you-
everything? Because the work plan, you know,
Is it-
has our intentions for objective standards, CalAV, parklets, you know, what we do all the time. Maybe the only difference might be is like things that we've noticed in applications that might be of interest to council. That's not in the work plan, but I think that was in the annual report where we were noticing, you know, like proposals for parking that were very close to trees. And so that would be something where like, you know, this proposal looks like it's great, but it's actually going to damage these trees without anyone realizing it.
Have more trees.
Yeah, or like consider the extent of parking when you're considering an application. So those are things that maybe the annual, but it's a question of like, is it duplicate effort or how can we make it not a duplicate effort? Is my question. Because I don't want to do it if it is a
Jody, do you
duplicate.
feel
effort.
that way, that there was a duplication?
Well, I think we didn't have the council's work plan in years past. I mean, this is only the second work plan that we've done for council. I think this annual report, you know, in previous years was a communication tool, you know, from the ARB to council, just sort of saying what work we have done over the year. And where we might be seeing issues, because that was in the previous work plan. Let me pull up.
The more I'm thinking about this, the more I am realizing it's different because we would sort of maybe be recapping key things that we've noticed over the last year. Like,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, this
projects
is-
that we've approved, projects that we've denied, and
Issues that came up.
issues that
were
came up.
Difficult to solve for one reason or another.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think to some degree, the annual report was, so we're talking about remote design review. Oh, just that a few concerns have arisen, you know, related to remote design review. San Antonio corridor designs, that was something that we were interested in because we know that more dense development is going to happen there in the near future. And then just communication between the boards. We had the awards in there, we had objective standards. And then just architecture review is important, yeah.
And I think we have going forward, we're going to have issues with state regulations that are affecting us here. We have problems, we have issues like the housing element report that's going to be coming out. These are pieces of future discussion that will be significant to us.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 big issues coming down the pike that the council could use some education from the architecture board on. And so this is our opportunity to really push that. We don't have an official council liaison, the ARB or the PTC. So there is very little real way to get their attention aside from doing what I do, is constantly politicking with them. But that's really informal. And what we really want is some way to say to them, look, you have these new state laws about housing. This is what it means. You have this opportunity to do a design study of the downtown. There was that grant that this council's been offered, and they're hesitating accepting a free grant to study putting housing downtown. Well, I think the architecture board should chime in on that subject. And this is the format we have to do that.
I do think we have to be a little bit careful that, you know, the architecture review board is a design review board. Whereas PTC is more of a reviewing policy.
I want to come to that.
It's
subject
difficult.
as well, Jim.
It's difficult, Jody. What if they don't do it? And we sit here thinking like urban designers rather than just architects.
But the question on the table now is Osmus about whether we do a work plan and a report to council, or if they're the same thing. And they could be the same thing. But when I look back at the one we did last compared to the work plan we made, they're different in my opinion.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah, they are different.
it's a lot of work. Putting that together is not,
That was so much work that I think you mostly did.
I did the last two of them. 'cause we took off. I
Winter.
finished up. But I think that's an important job of the chair.
You didn't do the when Win left? You
No.
didn't do-
I think-
I think
you
you,
took it
I think you
over.
finished it out,
Yeah.
right?
She started it.
Yeah, she
waffled
started
on
it.
that one.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to find, I guess, if we're doing elections in June, then the annual report would be in June as well, right? Because it would be the outgoing chair would do it.
That's one way to do it for sure. And the other way is, we just did the work plan for council in this, we just did it like a couple months ago. And so do you want to combine those two things? I mean, they're both communication tools to council. And actually the good part about the work plan is that they did have hearings related to that where you actually were able to speak to council. Whereas the annual report itself is just, yeah.
I think they
But I
should be.
remember the last one, I insisted that we do this with council.
We like read it to them. We read it
Yeah,
to
I mean,
them on the
yeah, we can
open.
certainly insist a lot of things and we can just,
Just
yeah.
Push toward, I would feel
No,
so
but-
as the mayor, and I remember sitting right next to
Yeah.
him, coordinating that whole thing.
Yeah.
You guys were, we were all there.
But I think
thought
if,
that was very successful as a communication drill.
yeah, but I think if you do it as part of the work plan, they're expecting more of a back and forth at that point. That's how they've sort of set that up.
But the timing works better if it's synced with the council's new council. And the new council will be elected when? November?
Elections are in December, but we were talking about our elections being in June. And I mean,
But in terms of-
March, April is 3/4 into someone's, chairship.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I mean, it
makes sense
doesn't
to do it
seem-
with the, if it's, especially as the chair's obligation. We have to do it as part of the chair's obligation. So it makes sense if the chair is leaving their post, then they should do it before they leave. And we have to get a lot of input as well. So it'd be something where like, I'd start a draft and then get input from everybody. And
Good idea.
David might be like, you forgot to talk about all of these things that we talked about. And I'd add it in and then send out another draft and
The last time we
That's
just had
fine.
a meeting
That
where we
looks good.
discussed it
Sounds
and
good.
and we agreed on the topics that were going in it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then I drafted up a paragraph, but asked everybody to help with it.
Yep.
And then we just putting it all together in one format was the biggest chunk of the work.
okay.
But we're gonna do
So
that in June again, it sounds like.
yeah, I think we sync it up with the chair, the outgoing chair.
Okay, so we're still doing two different reports, a work
It'd be
plan
two
and an
different-
annual report.
Yeah.
Are we,
Sure you want to do it in June?
Yeah, because then I don't want to be, say I'm not elected as chair, right? I don't want to be responsible for anything that happens between July and November or whatever, like that's not my job to cover that. That will be the next chair's job to cover that. In their annual report when they do it in June the following year.
Okay.
Okay, anything else to talk about this?
Peter, you said you had some edits.
I'm just trying to put together two thoughts here. I'm not sure if the end of the summer is not a better time to change than the beginning of the summer. It's essentially when everybody's just ready to stop thinking about city business. One of the strengths as chair is that you have more access to the city council. If you speak to them as the chair, they learn who you are. You have more interaction with them, right? As you become chair. Right? And so that if city council's taking a hiatus until end of August typically. July, at least they take off.
Yeah, it might be good though to have a new chair sort of ease
established
into
to
the position.
I'm just sort of thinking aloud, so as I think about it more, you're probably right that June is just fine. The second thought is that, well, I wonder if we couldn't put it in the bylaws that the chair shall take the lead on presenting this annual report. When I first came on the board, nobody was even aware this existed. It wasn't until one member of the planning commission came to me. I don't know why me. I wasn't involved in leadership. Said, you guys had to do this report. And so I brought it to whoever was the chair at the time, and they said, oh, we don't do that anymore. It was Alex Liu, who's had a huge institutional memory, and said, oh, we just don't do that.
Well, and because that's why I guess I was bringing up the meeting with councils, because there used to be a joint meeting with the ARB and the council. And I think that was the tradition that got lost. And then now this sort of work plan and hearing has brought that back a little bit more. It's not a joint meeting, but it is at least the chair going before council.
Yeah. So I wonder if we were to put that in our bylaws, though, that we shall have this annual report and the chair shall present it to the council or something like that. Just formalize it a little bit more. Maybe it'll stick.
And so it gets presented to council then when their new session begins. Huh?
Yeah, I feel that if the more we can have FaceTime with the city council, the more we're taken seriously.
Mhm.
The more we can really advise the council on things, on trends we see, issues that are going on.
Right,
That's
definitely.
a separate, it's what Jody and I were just talking about a second ago, but the more we put this in our bylaws is something we have to do. The chair shall do this thing.
Mhm.
The more likely it's going to last beyond any one of us, I think.
So you're saying creating the report alone.
Well, shall take the lead in drafting the report or shall be responsible for making sure the report happens. It's not so much to give the person an extra burden to do, but rather just to have the responsibility of making sure it happens, which is inherently the responsibility of the chair anyway, but by putting it out there. I would be in favor of just sticking that in the bylaws or in one of these sets of rules wherever
Well,
it makes sense.
So you're saying the chair is responsible for the annual report, but also presenting it to council.
The chair is responsible for producing and presenting the report.
What does everybody else think?
Well, you know, the council meeting was that we had, we were sitting in council chambers, you know, sort of split up. And Alex was at the other end and you were close to the middle, I think. And I was at the opposite end. And we were, each of us, talking to them about particular items, right? Asked about.
In the past.
Alex talked about trees and relative to parking structures.
Oh, you mean that meeting we had?
Yeah.
Yeah, they split us up all along, but we were pretty coordinated. Everybody had their piece. We had it planned out.
Yeah, we did. Only there weren't really any significant big issues that we brought up, except maybe.
I think San Antonio Avenue needs a plan.
Yeah, I think it was just sort of putting it on council's plate of, you know, here's what we think you need to do, and you know,
If we
council
do
gets to
big
mull it
projects in
over.
San Antonio, it becomes clear to us that there's really not sufficient guidance for applicants what to do or for us to evaluate. What does the city want?
So if we have the report, you know, in
Yeah.
June and develop it.
Well, yeah, so the annual report is the ARB sort of giving their professional opinion to council
Mhm.
as far as, you know, here's what we've worked on this year and here's how things might be improved,
Mhm.
you know, but these are many times things that only council can do.
Yes.
I think focusing it on things council can do might be a good idea, because the other part of this is that I just wouldn't want to present something to them and then there's like nothing to be done in some ways. Like it'd be
Yeah.
kind of like
So we could.
I don't want it to be a waste of time. for
So it
anybody.
could be like items that are prioritized. Really significant priorities for
Yeah.
Palo Alto. You know.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
Can we put this in some place in our bylaws or regulations, procedures? Do we have any support to do that?
I do.
Just
On the
write it down.
fence. I'm on the fence. I'm not fully convinced.
How can we make it so it really is continuous, so it doesn't get lost the moment somebody forgets about it? We have a new, Jody's not going to be the liaison forever. The moment somebody else comes in,
That's
how do they know to do this?
Yes, it is. I'm gonna give it to my staff soon.
You've been doing this for a while.
Yes, yes.
No, it's usually been every 5 years or so.
Yeah, no, Amy was doing it before me and then,
You're due for a change.
and Russ was here before. I mean, it's always, I mean, at least Amy's been here for a good amount of time, so there's continuity there, but
I mean, sure.
I think
Not
if we're,
strongly opposed.
if we're going to do an annual report, I think putting some level of detail in the bylaws is appropriate.
Okay. Any more on this? Nope. Okay. Last item. It's 11:15, just to let everybody know. We have one item left.
This is still on the bylaws, is that what we're?
This is about procedures. So this is something that David brought up.
Because I had a couple of boilerplate things on the bylaws. that Maybe we should address, if you don't want to spend the time on it, that's fine.
If they're easy for you to reach, why don't you list them out?
somehow I think that we should get an article in the review board that talks about the report.
On Palo Alto Online?
No, in this
Oh.
architecture review board under articles, and this might be the place to have.
What page are you
What
on?
we're talking about here. I read through all this stuff the other day. and
Yeah.
So I have a whole bunch of little minutia that I don't know if they want to get into it or not.
You took the
We,
time.
yeah,
let's-
we need to.
So,
Yeah, this is the only
so
time we're
back at
going to
page
sit.
27, this is in the boards and commissions handbook. It describes the use of ad hoc or temporary committees.
Mhm.
So the third bullet point on the second paragraph of the page, second paragraph down where it starts ad hoc or temporary committees.
Mhm.
Third bullet point defines what an ad hoc committee does, and that's not really how we treat it, because it says that the ad hoc committee comes back to the board for final decision.
Yes,
Wait, where does
We
it say
don't do
that?
Third
So
we
bullet
don't
point.
do.
Well, I think because what we're doing is we're
Oh.
sort of predetermining what the conclusion is. I mean, we're saying, you're gonna, it's a very limited items that the subcommittee is
just think-
looking at.
It caught my attention because it's not what we do.
Yeah, it says
It
returning
isn't
to the
what we
full
do,
board.
and it should be what we do.
Well, we only do it if we feel like we really need to.
So maybe you change it to may return to the full board.
Well,
this
so,
is-
so this handbook is, city councils. Yeah, we have no like 0.005% control over this.
Got it.
So I guess what I think we need to do is be sure when we appoint something to a subcommittee, we have to be very clear that we're delegating to them the authority to make a final decision.
Got it.
which
And
is
also
de
the
facto what we do.
authority to decide if it is enough that they could come back to us. Like, because in the past, we've done that.
Yeah.
If the
Sometimes.
applicant comes back with something, the subcommittee, feels like it's a big enough change that it needs to come back to the board, we do that.
So my takeaway was that in the bylaws, we probably should just be very clear how we use this ad hoc committee,
Yes, I agree with that.
so that every time we do it, we're still in sync with this other board, this other booklet.
Mhm.
That was my takeaway in the whole thing.
Mhm.
In the bylaws themselves, under Article 6, this is on packet page 44. Regular meetings of the ARB shall be held not less than twice a month. The Palo Alto Municipal Code says it shall be held monthly. And I thought we should at least just be sure we're on the same page on all that.
Where are you in the bylaws?
So the bylaws section, Article 6.
6, okay.
Packet page 44.
Yeah, so twice a month is in the bylaws.
Where does
But
it
you're
say
saying
monthly?
in,
In the
back on
municipal code.
42,
The code that establishes our board.
yeah,
What page is that?
40, packet page 42.
So if you go backwards to
What?
page 42, yeah.
It says at least monthly though. So I think we're okay.
And then my question would be, what about in situations where like this past meeting was canceled? Right? Are we
'Cause there
suddenly, like-
wasn't
right, 'cause
items.
There wasn't items. Does that suddenly mean that we've got a problem?
Well, I think that's why leaving it as is, whereas the municipal code says once a month, at least once a month.
And this one says not less than twice a
So,
month,
so my
The
notes here is
bylaws say,
not less than twice a month. So that's. are we
okay,
suddenly in
so the
conflict?
bylaws should
my,
change.
so my notes here, what I wrote to myself is to change this, so it says shall be held not less than monthly, just copy the language in the code itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then to strike where it says, the chair shall establish the dates of the meetings shall be held on Thursday at 8:30, etc. And to instead replace that with the secretary, with the advice and consent of the chairperson, shall establish dates and places of meetings.
Seems sense.
The secretary.
That's what
The
happens.
secretary is the staff.
Right.
Maybe we say staff. Right?
Well-
Or are they referring, is that secretary, is that
The
a,
secretary
tech-
is the
technical
official
term?
appointment of staff. What I'm doing is saying, don't put the meeting time in the bylaws.
yeah.
Mhm.
Just establish who
Agreed.
decides that.
Mhm.
So I have written that again, the secretary with the advice and consent of the chairperson shall establish dates and places of meetings.
Ooh. Special meetings only need 48-hour notice? That's
Uh,
different than this special meeting.
Yeah, I mean, there's the rules and then there's some good common sense. So
Okay, my other comment had to do with
that's good point.
procedural rules on packet page 49. We're talking about quasi judicial hearings, and we're talking about how much time people get to speak. And an applicant gets 10 minutes to speak, and then they get 10 minutes to rebut public testimony.
We don't do that.
We do that.
We do that.
We do?
Yeah.
I thought we
have
should
time
change
limit.
it to say an applicant gets up to 10 minutes, but not longer than the total length of public comment. I've always felt it really seems unfair to me. The moment anybody says anything, the applicant gets another 10 minutes.
Yes.
No, but they should be allowed
But why does the
Why
applicant
10
get
minutes?
so much more
because they
time
might
than any
need
member
it
of the
to
public?
rebut. They might need it to say the public comment ends up like 3 hours in the past. Sometimes it's happened, right? The applicant could get 10 minutes to respond to 3 hours worth of public comment.
Absolutely. No, you get 10 minutes if there's at least 10 minutes of public comment. But if there's only one minute of public comment, why should you get 10 minutes more?
It depends. Yeah.
I mean, it's just a small thing, but there's been several meetings where that's happened, and
Well,
They almost like use it. as
what
a
is
second
likely
presentation
here?
time.
They've- I don't know
Are
if
you
they've done
likely to
that.
get that much public comment, or are you also adding in our comment? Because they get 10 minutes to answer our
no,
comments
they
as
don't
well.
get, no, they don't get.
No,
They don't.
yeah, when they're
That's all.
answering questions,
At
that's,
the last
there
one,
is no
but
limit.
If we go through one session, we sometimes ask for the applicant to respond.
That's at the discretion of the chair.
Right, is that? part of
yeah,
the
if
rules
you're
here?
asking questions, there is no limit. It's just you asking questions and
Okay.
them
Well,
answering.
I come back to wanting to always be seen as being really fair, even-handed to everybody. I remember on the Castilla thing, it was a big deal just to take the time to listen to everybody. Took a long time to go. But many times I've felt that when an applicant gets effectively 20 minutes to speak, you have one person who feels strong and they get 3 minutes at most. That's not fair.
It's very rare that that happens.
It is.
And I don't know that it's worth
And-
changing the rules just
and-
for a very rare occurrence.
And the other aspect to that is that if there's 3 of them or 5 of them, then they get to combine their times.
Yeah.
If there's really that kind of sentiment out there, they will find others who agree with them, and there'll be a group, and then they'll
Yeah.
have a longer period of time. to
And
make the
often the applicant doesn't even take the time to rebut.
Yeah, I would just be in concern from an implementation standpoint of it.
Take
It's
too
a little
long.
more difficult to just remember what the rule
We
is.
do have
Yeah.
Long
Okay,
sessions.
look, it just caught my eye because I felt
Mhm.
that sometimes it struck me as unfair, 1, 2 or 3 times. On packet page 56, change of vote, item number 5. Board members may change their votes before the next item on the agenda is called or the meeting ends. That was just to me.
That's
you know,
cool.
Maybe it's silly, but.
Well, I mean, we
you shouldn't be able
had,
to change your vote until the next agenda item at the next meeting is covered.
They changed it, but before the next,
Next item on
before the
agenda.
next item on the agenda is called. And
Or
we
the
did, we
end
had
of
that
the
one
meeting.
time
Yeah.
where we,
If there is no item on the agenda.
So he's basically concerned that that allows for the rollover to the next 2-week meeting. So basically it should say.
No,
Yeah,
really?
exactly, exactly. I'm just trying to be careful.
Right, and make sure that that says, or the end of the meeting. Right, it has, you have
Oh.
to decide,
Or-
or the end of this
or,
meeting. You
or
can't roll
adjournment,
over.
yeah.
Or adjournment,
That's the intent, certainly.
right.
Interesting.
You're
Yeah,
smirking,
before the
Osman,
end of the
but
meeting.
Words have meaning.
And I think that's a valid one, because you can absolutely argue that, hey, there's no another agenda. item.
All right, sure.
Item number 10, packet page 57 requires when you're disqualifying yourself, recusing yourself, you have to say why you're recusing yourself. I wasn't aware that was the case. It says you have to disclose the nature of your conflict. That's probably a legal thing, but I'd like to think I
Sounds
can
like it.
disclose myself without explaining why I'm disclosing. Just
Recusing yourself?
recusing myself.
I mean, we've usually had people just say, you know, they live too close to the project or something like that. I mean, it,
Or they know the person too
Personal
well.
knowledge.
yeah, I mean, this person, yeah, I don't think it's usually pretty generic.
Mhm.
Violating HIPAA laws.
Yeah,
Like, I don't want to waste time.
yeah, I'd have to
So I'm
talk
just-
to
I
the
just- I
attorneys
flagged
about
so
that one.
On page 58, item 3, policy number A, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth line, usually quasi judicial hearings involve a single parcel of land. It's just not true.
58 where?
Page 58, 3A, fourth line.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's usually it's either a single parcel or contiguous parcels. And it's a usually.
It does say usually.
Doesn't say always.
We could add, I think contiguous is the right word, correct?
Why do you even just say it?
I think the difference, I mean, some of this is a quasi judicial project is on a specific piece of property, whereas, you know, policies are across the entire city. I think it's trying to say something to that effect.
I don't want to burn through this. I'm not a lawyer, but it's just, I underlined it. On page 59, item 5, disclosure again. Members will disclose any contexts which have significantly influenced their preliminary views or opinions about the item. My understanding was you disclose anything that's not in the public record that you've learned. That's the point. It doesn't have to significantly influence you just to be something you have to disclose.
You know, I've been sort of thinking about, do we have any disclosures? We say, yes, I went to the site. Seems to me that disclosures are very different than that.
Well, that's from Winforth.
Huh? What?
Yeah, that was kind of something that started after I joined, and then we've just kept it going because it wasn't there when I started.
We were trying to find a polite way to make everybody say they've been to the site.
It was more to pressure people to visit the site.
Well,
who hadn't
So that
visited the
gave
site.
you
Doesn't-
public
I
responsibility.
mean,
and then-
why isn't it then said, can you declare that you've been to the site? And
Yeah, why don't we
that's
just ask
simply
that?
it.
When
But
I-
the disclosure, the word disclosure means something else.
Well, no,
to me.
but I had a big discussion with Wynn about this, because she was the former land use attorney for
Yes,
25
I
years,
know.
right?
So,
She said, you need to disclose what's not in the public record. That's what's really happening, is you're a judge. You can only take evidence under certain circumstances that everybody sees you taking. So when you go to the site, that's giving you input of some kind that's not in the record. It's what you learn from being there. When you
Fine.
speak to a neighbor, when you have a meeting with somebody, when you look at the material board, some people say. But that's where I was saying what we should be disclosing then here is not whether or not it influences you, but rather whether or not it's in the record.
But it would be good to know if something did influence somebody. Like that would be something good to disclose.
I think so.
It's hard for me to say whether it influences me until I've heard
So,
everything.
I mean, it seems to me that we should be asking, have you visited the site or spoken to anybody who is a party to this project?
Well, and I think disclosures is just the generic way of saying that.
But we ought to
Sort of a
say
catch-all.
neither or something, or yes, both, or
I felt
one or the other.
I felt uncomfortable on a couple of occasions where I've done some technical research on something. We were reviewing cell phone towers. I just didn't believe the applicant's statement about what kind of vaults were possible.
Mhm.
So I did my own research on that. If I didn't disclose that I did that work, it's really unfair to the applicant. That this information is out there, but only me, I'm the only one finding it, and they don't have a chance to rebut or know what information. is. You
and
have to
that's-
disclose that you did that.
That's certainly the main reason for the disclosures, is that sort of information that you've done some extra homework, and everyone should have the benefit of that homework. But the same goes for a site visit. Like you said, a site visit sort of is a version of homework.
I think that was pretty clear.
Yes,
to
it
me,
is a
but-
version of the same thing. So
Yeah.
And presumably that research greatly influenced,
Your opinion.
wouldn't, knowing that that research exists would influence.
But what if it didn't? Suppose it just confirmed what the applicant was saying. Isn't that still important?
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm voting that we should just remove the notion of it influencing you and rather just be in the public record. But that's just a comment. So.
Okay.
So you're saying that we
I'm
should
not sure
not
that I
say
agree
Yeah,
with
I mean,
that.
I think all
Are
of
you
these
saying
things I'll have to take to the attorney. So, I mean, that,
Yeah.
Look, I'm just through the chair. That's just my comments.
Yeah,
Put
yeah.
them out there. We can move on. Thanks for tolerating me.
Is that it?
it's good. You did your homework.
It's great.
You can disclose that you did your homework.
Sit over at that coffee shop.
Okay, should we take a
Anything
quick
else?
bio break before we go to the
Uh,
next item?
Are we done? Or does anybody else have any comment? I had something to add to this.
Yeah, other comments on bylaws?
I know I had something.
I'm with you though.
David?
Yeah, just, we could take a break, but come back and just finish up on this then,
Sure.
when I find it.
I was hoping we could get to this other subject.
The
Okay,
item
well,
three?
let's maybe take
No, I
a,
mean,
take a
actually,
2-minute
we
break.
were-
2-minute break.
We were going to talk about putting something else in the articles about the timing.
Let's get to this one.
About the timing?
Yes, definitely,
Let's
for
do that
sure.
instead.
Well, the timing of the annual report, you mean?
Mhm.
Yeah. No, I think I have enough info on that one.
Okay.
That I'll draft something up, we'll have a formal public hearing where you can, make sure I got it right.
So I had one other, just minor stuff. Let me sort of go through this, and maybe it's not minor. But in terms of, there is under role of council liaison,
What packet
Okay.
page?
in the packet page and 26. So just informational purposes, there is the council meeting every Monday and it's all on, digitally recorded, et cetera, out there. And this says that that discussion should be officially transmitted to us as to what the council has determined. So we would have a choice. Either we ask Jody to make a report on what has happened at the council meeting, or we take responsibility for listening to the council meeting, which is a tedious matter, an hour's worth until 11 something at night. Jody will agree. So how do we get that particular piece of information? And it is oftentimes important to us to listen in to those, especially, of course, when there are projects which we have opined on and that are then reviewed by the council and decisions are made.
So which part does it say the council liaison? will-
Principal functions is to provide a wide range of information to the advisory board, such as information about council discussions, policies, and actions. That information,
What
I would
part of the
say
page?
Yeah, and I think I've done that sort of hit or miss, if you guys have questions,
yeah,
I
but-
try and answer them, but I haven't done a formal report.
exactly. So
Sometimes
I
in
mean-
our staff report, we get information from what the council has discussed.
If,
I feel like I remember seeing that in the past, especially like with the objective standards we've received.
well, if the project comes back to you for sure, then it
Yeah.
would be in the staff report.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a fair amount of items that don't come back to you.
Oh, so we
but I
don't how
know-
the council.
Yeah, I mean, because with the Bay Shore project, I mean, council, ARB has recommended denial. So board member Balte asked, has the director made a decision? And so because the question was asked, then I say, no, the director didn't make a decision. The director floated it up to council.
Mhm.
So I've just kind of done that as you've asked questions.
So, I mean, this is open question. How do we get
Well-
that particular information? What's the best way to do it?
There's no easy answer to that, David. The council has decided they don't want to have an ARB liaison on council. So that's out of our control, but we don't have that. There is no formal person on council responsible for communicating to us. If we push to get staff to do it, that's a really big ask.
Big
That's a lot-
piece.
A lot of work for them.
Well,
Yeah, and it's
report
not,
back
it's not
every
their
council
job
meeting.
either, right? This is the council liaison, not the staff liaison.
Right, well, David's asking for that information. And he's
I'm
right
asking for
that
that.
we need to know what the council's doing, or what staff is doing with our decisions or our recommendations.
we need to know.
But I don't know how you can formalize that.
So, well, you could formalize it by saying we recommend to every board member here to listen to the council hearing on issues that affect us. The timing is usually not exact, but it's close to exact. I mean, it's within 15, 20 minutes, something like that. You might have to wait for your item to come up and then have the hearing on both time. You've done that, right, recently?
That's
You
so
listened
much to
it.
mandate, though.
Yeah,
You
That's
can't
too
mandate
much.
it. No, I don't think it's possible
Like,
to
this is
mandate
already
it.
so much work, like to sit in council
So-
meetings for 5 hours on top of what we're currently
No,
doing.
I know, no, it's understood. But we need some of that information. I mean, Casalea, for example, we need
we
that
should have a
information.
council liaison.
We should ask council for a liaison.
We should ask
We
council
can
And
for
put
it.
so
that
that
up
we
to
don't have-
council again.
Yes.
Hey, you need to
Yeah,
help
maybe
us.
it's part of our annual report.
Well, it
They
is.
need
It's
to
already
give
been
us
part of
their-
our annual report several times. So it's not there.
Put it
Annual
again.
report. Annual report
You're
is
asking
correct.
that you want a council member to come to ARB?
No,
You're my-
no, just somebody from,
Or like a summary or.
Just
There would
someone
be
that we
somebody
meet.
who Summarizes council's
Mhm,
opinions on things that are pertinent to the ARB and then presents it to the ARB as some sort of
mhm.
condensed.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's probably staff.
The council's not gonna- I don't
Yeah.
think it's, I think we put enough volunteer time in already to say that we have to
Oh,
follow the.
Jody,
council's-
it's impossible for Jody to be.
Not for any of us to.
required. But I think we put it in our annual report that we don't get responses from council, that we need.
Maybe we can find out a
information we need.
solution that makes sense.
Mhm. So
This is
try
an
to remember
imperfect
that.
system, David.
I mean, we have,
Imperfect system. and so
Well,
this is
that's a
one of the
big
problems.
item.
we have council, I mean, there's council action minutes, and then there's council summary minutes, right? And the action minutes come out pretty quickly. I'm looking at Medina.
Let me, I think, yes, they come the
So, I mean, it could just
the
be,
next thing we did with the motion.
do we copy the council minutes into your packets? And then if you have questions,
Mhm.
I mean, that would be easy enough for
I think
staff,
that's
know?
much easier on you.
Yeah, yeah.
And just the,
And then it's a reminder for you to be like, oh, here's what happened. Do I have questions?
but would it be like the condensed version? I'm assuming it's not the full 5-hour minutes. It's the.
Yeah, yeah,
whatever's
yeah,
pertinent to ARB.
I think we could, well, it depends how quick you want it. I mean, the action minutes obviously come out quicker.
Mhm.
And the action is literally just approve, deny, whatever. And then the summary minutes are like our regular minutes.
Is there like a table, like a one that's currently existing, like an Excel sheet that has the project and then like the status that it's currently in? And maybe it's a similar like export of like the projects we've reviewed, the status, whether they're, been approved and awaiting council or like something like that. Maybe we could get,
That would be a new spreadsheet.
be a new spreadsheet.
Yeah,
So I think
it's a
maybe
good
just
idea,
the-
but
the high level minutes, right, with the action that's been taken. And then if we have further questions, we can request more information.
Sure, that
yeah,
may be.
I think that's a good enough
simplest.
trigger for all of us to just, then it won't slip by, because you'll see that
Yep,
council did something.
Seems like that's a
Yeah.
very
Okay,
good possibility.
that's easy
Good one.
enough.
Um, So, there's the chairperson shall appoint a special committee as they are desired. What we
Page are you
do is
on?
the ad hoc.
Which page are you on?
I'm on, again, the same page.
27?
44. I just think that we haven't used that process particularly.
I think we have more recently. I mean, usually we have the ad hoc committees for specific projects. But then now we've done the Parklet committee and we've done the
Yes, we have
Cal
an
Ave
ad hoc
committee.
part-
So,
a part of
yeah.
it, Yeah.
We've started actually following our bylaws, and the chair actually appoints the ad hoc committee members,
Mhm.
and they do it in public at the time that it's being done.
Yes.
It used to be where the staff would just ask you, who do you want to be on that committee? In private, the chair would pick 2 people, or staff would pick 2 people. I think it's much better for the applicant to see who that committee is going to be,
Yes,
and to
fine.
do it in public,
Mhm.
which I think we've been doing.
We have,
And
Except
then
for
any
the-
other committee appointments, that's one of the responsibilities of the chair.
right.
Yeah.
So the chair could,
Yeah,
for example, say, have a study group on some particular aspect that is left.
Sure.
Okay, we should consider that more as a possibility.
I don't know that the chair can form a committee.
Yes, well, no, it's a same, it says here, chairperson shall appoint special committees as they be desired.
So the chair does have that authority.
Mhm.
yeah,
I
the
have no problem with.
yeah, the chair can appoint any committee as long as people are willing to be on it and do the work.
Which is extra work.
Yes.
And there's also already plenty of work. So on a tie vote, I just looked at this and noted that if somebody abstains from voting, then there's a potential for tie votes, and then the project can be reconsidered or continued at another meeting. Something that we should know that that particular rule is there.
Mhm.
So items could extend on to a trip on beyond that.
Well, and I think, what page are you on?
Again, 44.
44. Packet page 44?
Mhm.
A tie vote constitutes a denial of an
That's
item.
what I was gonna say, yeah. That's what I had in my brain.
There's something built into this which lets you, if it is a tie and it's denied, a majority of the people who are on the board can still push it to the next meeting for reconsideration.
Right.
A member may then move to,
But it's,
reconsider.
it's funny, the way it's worded is that it takes the majority to decide to reconsider it. So it just takes one person who's on the fence, really. Okay, I'm not gonna. It struck me as odd. You would think the minority could ask to have it reconsidered.
Yeah.
It doesn't say.
Right. It's
I think it makes sense the majority would do it.
Well, yeah, you need a quorum.
Yeah. Why would you want the minority to decide that?
No,
Yeah, in my notes here, I scratched that, so it just shouldn't be there, but then I don't want to play lawyer either. It's just- These are established.
so, if you have a tie vote, you haven't made a decision about that project.
No, if you have a tie vote, you have made a denial. You've recommended denial.
But-
Tie is always a.
But is that correct here?
Mhm.
To the
Yeah,
That's what it says.
unless you continue the item.
So if one person's on the fence says, we can continue it to
You
the
can
next
continue
one.
the
Well,
item to the next meeting.
it would
if
only
it's a
ha-
tie.
It would only happen if somebody was
Perhaps,
absent, number one, because we've got 5 right now.
Yeah.
So if you only had 4 that day and it was a 2-2 vote, so now it's a tie,
Mhm.
which is, if you leave it that way, it's a recommendation for denial. Or you can make a different choice that 3 of you can decide to continue the item.
I think that's what it's saying here. Tie vote.
No, I think that's right.
Continue.
It's the paragraph under
Except-
section 5.
Except that the member of the board may then move that the item be
Yeah.
reconsidered or continued to
Right.
another meeting.
Right.
Mhm. So that's like continue to a
that-
date uncertain.
Well, or a date uncertain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that you'd have to get 3 people to
That'd be a
either,
majority
i-
vote.
if it's a tie, then you need 3 people to either say, let's vote again, or you
Member
need
of the
3 people
board.
to say, let's talk about this when the 5th member's here.
Yeah, that's basically what you're doing.
Yeah.
Giving the board the ability to consider whatever they want.
So what you're saying is that the person who didn't vote on it has to sort of join in at that point in order to have it extended to the next meeting. Can a person who says, I don't think this has been discussed, even though it's a tie vote, decide, can we talk about this in the future meeting, which is, I thought, what the intention was. here.
Yeah, they can move to do that,
Mhm.
and then they need a second, and then they need a majority vote.
Okay,
So that's right.
well, yeah,
Yeah, the same as any other motion.
okay, so they
Yeah.
can make that motion.
If
Yes.
it
A
ends,
significant way to interpret this
yeah,
phrase. I
if
think.
it ends in a tie, then
Mhm.
someone can make another motion.
Mhm.
And as long as three people
Agree,
agree with the motion, then it,
then it goes to the next meeting.
Yeah.
So it isn't specifically exclusively a denial. It could be continued to the next meeting and others could agree that it wasn't discussed enough.
yeah, if,
Yeah,
if
the
you get,
majority of people feel that way,
Yeah.
yeah.
yeah, if you get to a tie, you have another chance
Okay.
to extend it or
I
whatever.
think that's important for everybody to know. It doesn't mean that when you get a 2-2 vote, when one person abstains, that it's an absolute denial, because
Sure.
that issue could be brought up again.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
Okay. Anything else?
No, hold on just a second.
Itching for the bio.
Yeah, I
break.
think we need a bio break. Why don't,
Okay, should we take the quick break and then if
Yeah.
there's any last things,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
look
if
at
I
it.
have a last minute, let's take a break.
Okay.
yeah,
Let's
we're
take a
still
break.
on this item. We can stay.
So we'll come back in what, 5 minutes?
Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Microphone's on.
Microphone's on.
And
Okay.
Peter, make sure you're not leaning back too far.
Yes,
Don't
apparently
forget,
you were very
you're-
hard to
you're-
hear.
you were,
the whole
You really
time.
want to hear what I have to say.
Yes.
Control room
No.
wants to hear you.
Well,
Okay,
So
last
listen, I'm
thoughts.
still going, right?
last thoughts, yes.
Oh,
Last
yes, because
few couple of
bylaws,
thoughts,
okay.
Okay, because we,
So there's
it's
the
already, it's already noon and we have to go at
Oh, I
one,
understand,
so.
but Peter took it all, so I'm
Okay.
gonna have my chance.
Okay.
Yeah,
page-
everyone should
So
get a
page
chance.
Let's
number?
see, I've got
Yeah.
some important issues here. Okay, state, just a comment, general
Packet
comment here,
page?
state law versus the review issues.
Packet
here.
page, packet page.
Packet page. It's really not on here, it's my general thought. at this
Okay.
point. And so let's talk. The state law has limited the amount of times we can look at something now, or in general, a project coming through. So it really, that creates a kind of an issue for us. Because if we put it off to another meeting, sometimes we won't ever get to see a project again, and this is happening. Okay, so what do we do about that? I think that maybe we have to get a procedure that allows us to do enough preliminary review on projects that will allow us to communicate with each other of a possible way out of this issue.
Is this the next item?
This is
This
number
is
three.
a-
Because the next item is about preliminary review.
it
So we
really-
are going to the next
It ends
item.
up with,
Okay.
in
So-
that area.
Okay, so can we go to the next item then?
You're gonna go this way.
Presentation. Yeah, okay,
Okay.
Yeah?
Do you,
Let's do it. yeah.
do you
so
want me
we're
to go
moving on.
over
No,
the,
I just have one, I think I have
For the-
one other that.
for the
that
actual
is-
bylaws?
Well, I can't tell you exactly, but it's the issue of what happens when we have an ad hoc decision, what happens with that information? Jody, in a sense, it has to do with what I asked. for,
Yeah.
okay?
So on a, I'm just trying to, well, we're sort of, it's a retreat, so we're sort of free form. So ad hoc committees. So, we have a formal ARB hearing. We make a motion. The board says, whatever the item is, it's small enough that it can go to the ad hoc committee. We've got two people on the ad hoc committee who are then making a decision. And so this is 160 Waverly is the example
Mhm.
where it was a handful of housing units with a large roof deck. In that particular one, so the normal things happened, that it went to ad hoc committee. We always have sort of actually we're changing this. We used to send out a tentative approval letter that said you shall go to ad hoc committee. And then after ad hoc, we had this sort of separate letter that said, you've gone to ad hoc, you're all good now.
Done.
Yeah, you're done, is how we used to do it. But because of the laws changing, because of objective standards, all those sorts of things, what we're doing now is we're not sending out that approval letter. We're basically saying, the motion was to go to ad hoc. You have to do that first, then you get your approval letter. And then your appeal period starts. So it does change the appeal period. But we're having to do that because of how the state laws have changed, because it would be, and I'm not going to remember the full reason why, but there was a very good reason why we changed it
When did that happen?
in the last month or two.
Oh, so that's really recent.
Yeah.
Because before it used to be that we would approve the project.
Well, the full board, I mean, the ARB part has not changed. It's the staff part that has changed and when we send out the approval letter. Yeah, so nothing on the ARB side has changed. But with the 160 Waverly, what happened in that specific example is that there was a motion, it was supposed to go to ad hoc committee. It did go to ad hoc committee, but also there was an extra wrinkle that there was a daylight plane that staff did not realize applied to that property. And it was a misread of the code. The code online is not formatted in the best way, and that's how it got missed. And so we had to, instead of them being able to go straight up with this roof deck, they actually had to adhere to a daylight plane, which means the roof deck got smaller. So I did not bring that back to the board. I felt like staff could handle that because the roof deck's getting smaller. But what happened is then the building sort of lengthened. And that's why I was emailing you as a member of the ad hoc committee. This lengthening, like, is that okay? Or do you feel like that needs more review? You felt like it was minor enough. I felt like it was minor enough. And so we just ran with it.
Maybe I saw it a little differently because actually the shape of the roof changed. They met the idea of a peaked roof instead of a flat roof, you know, so that what we had some general concerns about a flat roof in the general meeting. I mean, we had concerns about the aesthetics of it. If you change it to a peaked roof, it's quite a substantial change in design. I thought it was a wonderful, but that's in my individual opinion. And you know, the question is this the kind of thing that should come back to the board then if there's a change in the shape of a roof in a design like that?
There's always minor changes that happen in a project. And so there are definitely things that staff has to take responsibility for. And I think this was probably a little bit bigger than we like to do by ourselves, you know, especially because the ARB was involved early on. So we like you to be involved the whole way.
Mhm.
You know, there's other projects that are just small from the beginning and we handle the whole thing ourselves. But this was a case where this project had gone down a path, not knowing that daylight plane was required. And I felt like I felt like it was a small enough change that staff could handle it. I also felt like we owed it to the applicant to send them through a more streamlined process.
By then, we spent a lot of time on a little 3-unit,
Yeah.
4-unit, you know,
Yeah.
there was no doubt about that. And that entered into my thinking as well.
Yeah.
And so, but I made a kind of a judgment to you and I couldn't get Alex, who was the other member of the ad hoc, because he's no longer with us.
Yeah.
So.
And that's exactly why
I'm a little bothered by, but I mentioned to you, I think you should forward the drawings to the 2 other members of the board at that time.
And that's what I can't do, because then we start running into Brown Act problems.
I think, David, when we assign an ad hoc committee to review something after we've approved it, it's really like we trust the members of the ad hoc committee to make the best decision. And if you felt like it didn't need to come back, then we have to trust you. And you also have the power to say it needs to come back to the board. And that's maybe why you guys had that interchange where staff asked you, should it come back to the board or is it okay? And we as a board trust you to make that choice. So if you made that choice, we trust
There's
you.
one individual here, you know, the ad hoc is usually 2 and we didn't have the 2.
If
I
you
did.
wanted a
Okay,
second
I
opinion,
mean,
we
frankly,
could have
I
given you
didn't-
another
I didn't
person.
mind making the decision. I made the decision.
Yeah,
right?
so I think I don't think it needs to come back to us. I mean, we can seek
I
it
didn't
out
think
maybe
it
if we want.
needed to come back to us. I just felt you needed to know it was changed. What if you went back to this project, you know, a year from now and it's construction, it's going up and you say, hey, listen,
And that
this
was,
isn't what we approved.
yeah.
What happened?
We'd
And
be
that was
like,
the other
David
reason that
approved
I
it, and
wanted
we'd be
to-
like, okay, that was David's prerogative to approve it.
Would you say that?
Yeah, I'm pretty bothered hearing this. You're saying there was only one member of the ad hoc committee at this point who made that decision?
Mhm.
To me, the ad hoc committee has a very focused task. There's a very clear issue that we've been discussing. Say we want to check the color of the side of the building.
Mhm.
So the committee is going to check whether it meets the discussion we had.
Mhm.
Anything beyond that is not within their purview. They're not empowered to act on my behalf on something we didn't agree on clearly. Changing the shape of the roof of a building is to me, a big deal.
Well, but
I'm
the changing of
disappointed
the
here.
shape of the roof had to change because of the code. I mean, there was
I
nothing,
understand that it's a difficulty and it's unfortunate. Doesn't change the basic design impact of that decision. And to have that not come back to the board, to have the ad hoc committee not say, this is beyond our purview, you have to send it back to the board, I think is a mistake, especially if there's only one. I mean, the board, an ad hoc committee needs to have 2 members. And so if there's only one member, then that was a mistake administratively. The chair should have appointed a second.
Yeah, I
member to
didn't know
committee.
that we needed another
So
member.
I'm
Well,
really
we
distressed
don't-
that this didn't- that
well,
this seemed to have gone through this way.
I mean, normally on these types of things had this, there's some projects that maybe are on the fence about whether they should come to ARB or not, or things like that. And so in those cases, there's been a number of times where we would talk to the chair and have that discussion, do we think this is a significant project that should come to the ARB? And so in this particular instance, though, I had an ad hoc committee that had the most recent experience with the project. And so that's why I was asking the vice chair.
Okay, well, look, I mean, where we are is
This
where
is
we
sort of
are.
beyond
I
us
think
right now.
to me, it reinforces the importance of being really careful when we create an ad hoc committee, what that committee is supposed to do. I think it comes back to that boards and commissions handbook, which according to that, it has to come back to the board anyway. If we're empowering a subcommittee to act on our behalf, we need to be very focused on what they're doing.
Well, usually we are, right? Usually the ad hoc committee has
Well,
things
I
that they
thought we were
review.
on this project.
Yeah,
It
I
has
think
nothing to do
this
with
was
changing the shape of the roof or
this was a
setback.
staff, I mean, this was a staff decision.
That's fine.
So,
We are where
okay.
we are.
It was a staff decision. I went along with it because I made a judgment for everybody. That's the 3 of us.
You're empowered to do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm empowered. No, I'm not.
No, you
Because
are.
there's really
Oh, you
supposed
are.
to be 2 people.
Well, that's maybe something that could have been brought to our attention if we wanted, if we knew that we had that missing hole, we could have found someone to
Yeah.
fill that hole. But once we approve a project, it's approved.
That's right, yeah, I thought it was better approval
And
goes out.
yeah. And the subcommittee is basically like the babysitter for the rest of the things that we were hoping to look for afterward.
Okay. But
So, I mean, yeah, I mean,
I'm raising the issue because we don't want this kind of thing to happen again.
sure. And if the subcommittee finds something that's outside of their purview, then yeah, it should be brought back to the board. We know that now for
Absolutely.
next
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm hoping the instance just doesn't happen again.
So do I, Joe.
Is this a recent thing or is this,
Yes,
Yes,
I mean, this
because-
in the last many weeks or so, yeah.
because this really needs to be put in the minutes of the board meeting so that everybody knows what goes down. And we've struggled with that in the past, that the minutes need to reflect ad hoc committee hearings as well.
Yes,
And it does that now, but
Yes.
I don't
Yes,
recall seeing this
absolutely.
particular one.
Yeah, and that's what that approval letter, which that sort of ad hoc approval letter used to do it was some sort of a minutes. But now that we're not doing the approval letter yet, okay, let me think through that for an extra minute.
It just makes me all the more cautious about when we appoint an ad hoc committee.
yes. It brought it up to me as well. Yeah, that's saying-
I mean,
that's
it's good to
ridiculous.
reiterate what the job is for the ad hoc committee.
I
But
support the concept that the chair would be allowed to advise the staff on whether something has to come to the board or whether it goes back again. And again, you trust the chair, that's who you elect to do these things.
So, the first part of that should be the ad hoc decision, which would have been Alex and myself, let's say, should come back to the chair in some way. But Jody, you're saying because of regulations, it cannot do that.
no, come back to the whole
Has
board.
to get
or
agendized
not at
to the
all.
whole board in a public hearing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I as staff was ready to approve this.
Yeah.
I just was realizing that it had gone through a whole ARB process, and so I didn't want to leave the whole
Understood.
board out of
All of
it.
The chances are about 100 to 1 almost that we would have, as a group, approved it anyhow. If you took a look at it, you would say that, I'm sure.
We trust you in that way. I mean, that's what I trust I feel like people who get assigned ad hoc committees are trusted to take care of it. And if
But
you didn't know that
there-
that was outside of the purview and now you know,
I
and
mean,
that's
I
okay.
felt pretty comfortable in doing that, okay? But But on the other hand, I think it really could have come back a couple of weeks later, almost the way the council takes all of these other items that really aren't part of the general public interest anymore and makes some quick
As
decisions.
a
about spending
consent sort of item.
money. Consent item,
Yeah.
that seems to me a process that we could incorporate into our procedures. We have a few consent
I
items.
think we tried to do that. I remember bringing it up and somebody, the lawyer said, we can't do consent items for some reason.
Well, and I think it would, even if we did, it would be hardly used. I mean, it would be this one-off,
Well, I would rather have a consent calendar than have an ad hoc committee, to be honest,
Exact. Oh,
for exactly this
Interesting.
kind of thing.
yeah.
Because a consent
Okay,
calendar is
for-
still,
yeah.
a consent calendar goes to the entire board. It takes two members
Two.
of the board typically to pull it from consent to get discussed. So until
Yeah.
it crosses that threshold, it's very simple for the applicant.
I like
But
the
it
procedure.
doesn't leave it entirely in two members making a decision. I think,
Or one.
How does
member.
that work, though?
I think architecturally, sometimes you want to have that give and take with the applicant that you do at an ad hoc committee. And Kendra and I were doing one the other day where we had, what was it, that John Lum's building? And there was some debate about how that railing was built, right?
Yeah.
And we had a discussion with them until we understood what they were thinking, and we had to, didn't we ask them to, they had to provide a better drawing to the staff?
Yeah.
So they met the design intent, but it wasn't documented.
Yeah, and I think,
It's kind of cumbersome to do that through a consent calendar.
there
Yeah.
usually is no discussion with consent items.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
But this one you're talking about for Heather's building on the corner there, that would have been perfect for a consent calendar.
Certainly was.
Because I would have agitated
relative
like
to
crazy to
what
pull
we
that
do,
From
you know,
consent.
that kind of a change, you would have looked at it and said, they did it, finally, thank you. You know,
But
all
I
of
don't
the-
know. I
All of
feel like-
this, all of the
Albert Young said
solar,
We just can't do that.
can I talk about this? That all of the solar
consent
collectors were on the
calendar?
roof now.
I don't know. I don't know
I
how
don't
that
want to
would
go
work.
into too much here, but.
Yeah, because I feel like if it's a design change, it requires discussion. It can't just be something that shows up.
Yeah.
And I can't say yes or no without knowing why that happened and having at least a little bit of discussion on it. So
Okay,
I don't see how a consent calendar works logistically.
Well, I mean, it's normally contracts or second readings, where the council's just saying, yes,
Yeah, we've already talked about this, then yes. Yeah,
and it
but
probably would
Or we
have
don't
happened
need to
just
talk about
exactly
it.
like that. It would have happened
I mean,
like
it's
that.
things
We've
that you-
already, staff brings them all of these things that are, they have to pay for somebody to go out and clean the streets or something, and they say, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, it's real easy stuff like that that goes onto a consent calendar. So,
okay, well,
If
it's
it's
been brought up.
legally possible to do that, I think it would avoid the problem that we ran into there.
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree.
yeah, I guess the only reason I don't agree is we were trying to do that one quickly, and putting it on an ARB agenda is not quickly.
Can consent items be put on quicker onto?
I mean, we still, it's still only twice a month.
It'd be an agendized item, yeah.
Yeah.
The only speed.
The
is that
applicant
it's
will have
not
to give
getting
another
discussed.
presentation.
Yeah. Yeah, but
So
it's,
what do you say?
Should we have a consent? Sure, I think it'd be great if we could do that. It's another tool in our box, but if my memory serves, we were told we can't.
Yeah.
So we could ask her to check that
Yeah,
again.
I mean, I think
Check
if
the
this
time
happens
of it.
again, either somebody on the subcommittee says it needs to go back to the board, and then we just have it as another agenda item on the board. Or, or they approve it, if it is within
Okay.
their purview.
This sounds like a one-off thing,
Yeah,
that just a couple of things didn't quite go smoothly.
okay. Anything else before moving on to the early review of
I'm
projects?
okay.
okay.
Anything else?
With that.
Yingshi, Kendra?
No,
Okay.
So I can introduce this next one just a little bit, and then I'll let David take it if that's okay.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make sure and sort of lay out the existing process, and then we can talk about where we go from there. So I gave you on packet page 63. We do request, we highly recommend that, new buildings and such go through a preliminary ARB process. And that is one hearing with the ARB. And it's supposed to be, obviously at an earlier stage in the design so that things are still moldable. And then you see here our checklist of, the things that we asked them to give you as the ARB, so that you can make some informed comments. And then packet page 65 is then listing the formal process. So, and it's just walking, and then page 66 is the checklist for the formal process. And the formal process is really, they're submitting an application. Staff is reviewing it for at least 30 days. We run it through all the different departments, transportation, watershed protection, all those. We're getting comments back from them, and staff is making sure that the project adheres to the code. Have they met their setbacks? They have enough parking, all that kind of stuff. And also, as much as we know it, we're trying to some degree predict what the ARB is going to say. ARB would like benches. ARB would like, below grade parking, things of that nature. To meet the ARB findings, to meet the context-based criteria, all those sorts of things. So we're talking that through with the applicant. And then ultimately, it's once we feel like it's a decent project and meets the code, we will bring it to the ARB. And you have, on most of these, you would have up to three hearings. And the applicant should be making changes, in between that time period. So I think it's a matter, and also sometimes the first hearing, depending how the applicant is, if they are agreeable and working with us, then we'll continue on. If they're not so agreeable, we might actually bring it to the board early. Or if we just think that the environmental review is going to take so long, we want to give the architect some early information. We'll come to a first hearing and let you weigh in, and then wait a little bit, wait till we have all the CEQA and things before we go into a second hearing. Because, at the second hearing, you could recommend approval if it was a good enough project. So that's sort of how we're doing it right now. Page 72 is the actual code section. The legal language that talks about the process. And I think in here somewhere somewhere it says that, the prelim is only a recommendation, it's not a requirement. And then of course this section has, where you can appeal and all those sorts of things. But I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the current process. And I think what I'm hearing from board members is that, do you want to weigh into more when we come for our first hearing, or even when we come for a second hearing? Like maybe you've made comments in a first hearing, and maybe you want to look at it and see, have they really addressed your concerns before we come to a second hearing? Because we do have that limitation on hearings, and we want to make sure we don't burn through them and not really get the project fixed. So I'll leave it at that.
You have one quick question that hopefully it's just for my own clarification. On packet page 65, it says major architectural views, new construction of buildings or additions that are 5,000 square feet or greater. So that's at number one at the top there. This does not apply to residential though, correct? This is IRB for residential, not this one.
This is all architecture review.
So does residential have to go through IRB and ARB?
No, the IR process is for two-story homes.
Right.
The architecture review process would be more for multifamily.
Okay, I got a little.
Families or more.
Yeah, it's just that number one said new construction or buildings or additions that are 5,000 square feet or greater. You can totally imagine having a 6,000 square foot house. Does that get reviewed here?
I can see how you're reading that, but no, that's not the
Okay,
process.
Just curious.
I
Thank
think
you.
the second bullet point refers to the residential requirement.
Got it. Just
They are
checking.
separate, so.
Yeah, it
You
just
could
said.
imagine that the single family.
Yeah,
Well,
being 6,000
there
square
is
feet.
number 3, which is 3 or more adjacent single families. That's the only time the board would see single family.
Got it.
And we did see that with Zuckerberg's property.
Oh, yes.
No, Roger Kohler did a project on California Avenue, Midtown, 2 years back with 3 big houses right next to each other. The ones in Mayfield, right? Maybell, whatever it's called.
Maybell.
The 16 houses off of.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well,
I
that's,
live right
that's
near there.
16 houses,
you?
but I'm
Yeah.
thinking
Oh,
just
yeah.
like
That
the,
was down the street.
yeah, I said,
More
but that
than
was
three.
single family. Yeah, you're right. That was
those
single
were-
Right
family.
down the street from there.
We really ground those up. Those were.
Yeah. And there's been some
Okay.
church properties where, you know, if they sell off the parking lot and do 3 houses, then we've reviewed those,
Yeah, okay,
but not just the one house by itself.
okay, just curious.
So then, so the issue is the 5 meetings and that's it, you max out. Suppose we get 2 and the council gets their preliminary meeting, that counts, by the way. They have a very preliminary meeting that they say a project is or is not got the potential to make it.
I'll have to double check with the attorneys, but I think the preliminary review meeting it has a separate file number. It is sort of a separate process. So I don't think we have to really count the prelim meeting, and housing projects could skip that piece if they chose to. But I'll ask about the prelim meeting, but I think it's mostly the formal process that has that
Okay.
5 hearing limitation.
So some projects could very well come to us and go to PTC and go to council. Start with council. That's why I'm asking, whether that counts. So we are going to be limited now because of this, because of state requirements. And we can't really extend the full extent to this. So how do we deal with it? It seems to me that, what Jody described as the first submission that we get, it's oftentimes very extensive. It includes landscaping, it includes what things that the applicant must do. For example, they have to do the full survey, they have to get into some of the mechanical issues. If they're raising the site levels, they have to deal with all of that. They have perimeter walls to deal with. They have, there's a huge, we've already experienced that, so we know, I don't have to describe it anymore. So it seems to me that we could have, the chair could ask for a committee of one sort or another, ad hoc or otherwise, to look over a project in its very preliminary stage. And you could see that on the list that's described here, the site planning. So if you took title sheet, vicinity map rendering of the project on packet page 8067, you have lot area, site coverage, floor area, setbacks, height, required parking, building occupancy class. If you took the very first stage of a project and that was submitted in a schematic format, we could have a lot of input in something like that. In particular, we could have input in housing projects that are complicated like that, and manage to go and take a tour of some of the, we would be interested in going to the community and seeing what else is here, For me, that's very important, because when you come from New York to out here, everything is totally different, in scale and the use of sites, et cetera. We could have a preliminary meeting that had some input into the opportunities for, say, a developer to develop alternatives. I think that that could be very useful in complex projects. And so I'd like to get, your feeling about that. Seemed to me that you could, the chair and the vice chair meet at the initial filing of the schematic concept, preliminary zoning application and site plan. And they advise, let's say, the board to say, hey, we're going to get a housing project coming down the line. So let's go look at this kind of a housing project around town, inform the board that they should go out and do some research in it. Then the board might meet and I don't know, this doesn't work. You don't have an official application that's put through the process yet. So maybe that's as far as you go at this point. And the applicant submits the project then, and it goes through with this preliminary study. That's kind of what I would think would be a useful item for us to have in our pocket, so we could do that prior to the fully developed drawings that do come to us.
So, so given that there is on packet page 63, there's a preliminary ARB
Yes,
checklist. So how is what they would submit to us different from what's on this checklist? Because we have sometimes seen this as a board before. Like we saw the Bayshore project as a prelim, I think.
Yes.
So are
No,
you
we
suggesting
saw-
something
we
like,
saw the Bayshore project, Peter,
Was that a preliminary application or was that the first of the?
that was the first.
No,
we've only done-
we've seen
we
it
saw it
twice.
as, yeah, we saw it as a prelim and as a formal project.
The prelim
But you
was
said that-
very close to the final submission. There were hardly any change.
Well, that's on the applicant.
I'm,
yeah, so the question is like, are you suggesting
yes. I'm
a
su-
pre-prelim?
Yes. A prelim.
And does that count towards a hearing?
No,
Well, that's, yeah, I'm
no, I was suggesting that it.
Oh, you're
would
asking the
be-
lawyer.
I'm asking the lawyers as we
No,
speak, yes, but
I don't think so. I would say it's the chair gets a committee to look at a project. And as it comes into planning,
so I think there's, we already have a preliminary review process. It is not required, and so you could change the requirement part of things. And we do have to double check with the attorneys, does it count towards the 5?
if it's 2 people out of the committee.
Yeah,
So
and
that's not what Jody's.
but I
saying
mean,
right
that would be another way to do it. If it does count towards the 5, yeah, maybe that's a way around it. The other thing, I guess, I mean, so the prelim would be the best because that's really in the early stages of the project. The other thing I was trying to think through is the formal application. That first 30 days, we're routing it to the various departments. Do you want to be considered a department? And looking at it in the first 30 days. It would have to be, like you say, maybe just 2 people or 1 person or something like that. But then you're reviewing a formal project raw. There is no staff report or any of that to go with it.
From that point on, zoning will become more significant. Mechanical issues become more significant, elevations become more significant. The intention would be that they would be kind of block drawings of some sort, if they're going to be elevations at all, they'll just be block drawings.
Well, I mean, I think that's the prelim process is these sort of more schematic sketches. I mean, architects can bring anything they want to a prelim meeting.
They could.
When you get to a formal application, you've got to have
You've
everything.
got to have all of this in.
Yeah.
And it becomes, planning, look at it from the comp plan point of view, which
Mhm.
has got to be done completely.
Mhm.
Those wouldn't have to be done at this stage. This is a schematic idea to bring it in, and then we have some voice in that.
Yeah, but I think that is the ARB prelim though.
No, it wasn't on Bayshore.
Shall we treat housing project differently? Because it's most likely the housing project had the 90 days limit and also the 5 meetings maximum.
Yeah, and it depends on the Bayshore project is an SB 330, so it has the 5 hearings. We still have some discretion. Whereas in the near future, objective standards got its first approval from council. The second hearing will be on June 20th. And once that is in place, then housing development projects that are mostly housing can just have the 1 hearing.
That's the cursory.
It's advisory.
And it's
That's a
advisory, yeah.
separate issue from what they-
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not the same thing.
yeah, okay. So we're talking about discretionary 5 hearings kind of projects for the most part.
Yes, we really are. And they'll probably be housing projects.
Let me weigh in on this, David. I think the issue is that frequently, or not frequently, on some projects, we feel that we're looking at the project when it's too late to make some of the changes that we think would make a lot of sense to change. And by the time the applicant has put forth the whole package, if they've chosen not to do a preliminary hearing, or sometimes even when they do a preliminary hearing and it's a complex project, they've already made some very fundamental site planning issues, decisions of how to approach trees or views or things that I sometimes feel like, gee, I think I would have approached it differently, or at least I'd like to see you have done it that way. And I don't know what mechanism you can use to get a seat at the table earlier, because you can't get all 5 of us without getting that information in the process.
You can't do it.
The preliminary thing works pretty well for that, but it still is some formal sort of a process. They have to make an application. It's a public hearing. It's been agendized. So to Kendra and Yingxi, there's 2 things you should know that we have in the past 5-7 years. There's for every ARB meeting, there's a pre-meeting held between staff and the chair and the vice chair. Nominally, the purpose of that meeting is just to review what's going to happen at the meeting, to make sure there's no administrative things, to understand how you want the meeting to go, stuff like that.
Make sure there's a materials board if there isn't one.
Yeah, and it's just, and the chair and the vice chair can ask questions that we will later answer at the hearing.
So what I've advocated for, and I think would be a good adjustment to how we do things, is to take that pre-meeting. So it's not the full board, it's just the chair and the vice chair, or whoever maybe is sitting in for one of those 2. That avoids the Brown Act issues. It's only 2 people. But to say that they should be looking at projects in the pipeline, not just projects coming up at the next meeting. And they should be looking at it for 2 things. One is just the basic design approach. And the second thing, I think, is the presentation, the thoroughness of what you're seeing. Many times we'll get an application where we think how the project relates to the building to the left is critical. And the applicant doesn't even provide an image of that. Whereas if I were sitting in a meeting, I would just say, be sure you bring that image, make that drawing for me. I need to see the relationship to the adjacent buildings. And a lot of times the staff, they're planners, they're not architects, and they just don't see it the same way we do. And really, we're just helping that kind of input. And it just short circuits a loop in the process by having that input of what information will help make the application complete. And as much as you're waiting for applicants to provide a complete package, I know that staff talks to people as they prepare applications. And that's where I'm saying, Jody, you and your staff could bring in the pipeline projects to these pre-meetings as well. And just say, this is something that's going to be coming up. Here's what it's looking like. Even offer the applicant a chance to be at that meeting as well. The chair and the vice chair could then say, well, this is something that you really should bring for a preliminary meeting. You really encourage the applicant to put this in front of the whole board. Or you might say, we think the board's going to go for this.
I'd like to add to some of your comments here, if I could. When you're finished.
So I don't want to go on and on, but I'm just trying to make the argument that we have a mechanism of this pre-meeting, and we could use that to pre-screen projects for design compatibility and presentation content.
Do you think I could respond to that?
Yeah, I agree with Peter about 90% there. I think there might be a problem if you have the applicant at that meeting. I think that might be something to avoid. I'm not saying absolutely avoid it. Maybe the applicant wants to be there to hear some prelim, but I think it doesn't represent necessarily the board decision. So it's a bad idea to bring, it's a questionable idea to bring in the applicant. I agree with him about the relationship between buildings and separation and open space and all of what you described. I also think that in looking over packages that I've been looking at, I'm very bothered by the fact that we only get straight on elevations all the time. straight on elevations are great for architects to see how to put things together. They're not great because you don't see what buildings look like really from the ground level. And oftentimes that's a problem for us. So we should, if in the matter of inclusiveness, we should have drawings, perspective drawings from eye level view that we insert into these packages in some way.
So that's absolutely where the checklist comes into play.
Yes,
If there's,
absolutely.
if
That's already in
there's,
there.
Absolutely.
if there's something that you always want, it needs to be
Yes.
in the checklist.
It needs to
It's
be
easy
in the
enough to
checklist.
say add a rendering.
Yeah.
I
So
wanna also get everybody's opinion.
Sure.
as well.
That's fine. Other than that, I agree with Peter that this is the process that should be used, and that a committee is the right way. A committee or the ad hoc or the chair and the vice chair, whatever it is responsible for this so that it's legally legitimate.
Okay, I'm gonna say a piece and then I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak. So my issue with having this as part of the pre-meeting is that we already use all the time in the pre-meeting to talk about what's gonna happen on Thursday. And to do this kind of like meeting, like pre-meet, to do this thing for an applicant before they even submit a preliminary meeting takes a site visit. It takes time to study the site. It takes way more time than just to talk about like, is there a material board for Thursday? The prep that we have to do for a meeting for that is much more than we would do otherwise. And to put that on the chair and the vice chair will make no one ever want to be the chair or vice chair unless they're retired and have all kinds of time. It's just inequitable, right? It's not fair. And I want to be able to encourage anybody, young, old, employed, retired, have families, have a cat,
Cats don't need any
all
work.
we
Come
should
on,
all
they
have
go
an
for a
opportunity
walk.
to contribute. So I would be open to a process where if something comes in the pipeline, that maybe staff maybe asks the chair, look, there's something in the pipeline, give me 2 people. And then a subcommittee is formed in advance. And then this is separate from the pre-meeting. It's a separate process altogether. So I'd be open to something like that. At the same time, I don't know what applicant would go through this trouble to do it. Because as we've seen in the past, when we've had preliminary meetings with applicants that are open-minded, they listen to us at the preliminary meeting and they come out with a great product on the first meeting. And then if an applicant does not want to do this, they'll do a preliminary meeting and change nothing. And then it's just their attitude and there's nothing we can do about that. There's only so much power we have as a review board. And it's really on the applicant to really take that initiative if they want. So I don't know that creating a whole new process is actually going to change anything for us. We can try it. I'm open to trying it, but I'm skeptical based off of the projects we've seen in the past. We've seen the preliminary meetings do wonders. Like I remember seeing Wilton, Wilton had a preliminary
Wilton.
meeting.
Mhm.
It was a nightmare before, right? It had lots of issues that we pulled out and it came
Yeah.
out swinging on the first day. It looked
did.
amazing.
Mhm.
And so, that's something where like an applicant is really open-eared, they're open-minded, and that's when the process really works. But I really don't know that it's all on us to make something work on the city. Like the applicant has to be a co-partner to do that. And so I think the preliminary process makes a lot of sense. I think it fulfills what you're asking to do. And to have a pre-meeting, I'm skeptical that it would work or make a difference. So I want to give Kendra and
Mhm,
Yingxi
yeah,
a chance to
yeah.
respond.
So do I.
Well, I think pre-meeting is kind of good and is useful, but for the design process, actually for architect, it's the basic process. They do the site analysis first. So depend on what deliverables we are asked. So if we want to ask them about the lot coverage, the setback, heights, all those kind of things, it's basically the first thing they need to solve when they design a project, right? So I think it works for them. it is not like some extra burden to the applicant. And also, I think subcommittee works. I agree. It's not necessary to be the chair and vice chair because everybody will be afraid of that position. But I think if it is just very preliminary information, maybe we can ask the applicant to prepare like a simple package and email to everybody on the board,
yeah.
and then everybody had a chance to quickly know what's there. And if somebody has the strong opinion on certain things, then they can let the subcommittee know, like if there's any major concerns there, instead of just rely on those two board members.
I admit I'm actually quite a bit on the fence here. There's a part of me that I fully agree that there's an interesting thing. So again, I'm mostly in my own practice do residential, right? So I've had incidents with Palo Alto where you sort of have to dive in head first. You get structural, you get civil, you get all this stuff done, and you present it, and then something doesn't, like one little thing doesn't actually allow for that. So you kind of have to start all over, and all of that money and time and effort is wasted, and it's extremely frustrating. Now, the fact that we already have a preliminary sort of meeting process that the applicant can or is required to use, and whether or not they utilize it the way that Wilton did, or whether they don't the way that another project did not, I do think that's up to them. And so I'm sort of curious what the additional meeting would really accomplish that the other meeting could not. And I guess that's sort of where I'm a little bit torn, because yeah, the more information you get, the better. The more, stamps of approval you get along the way, the more you feel like you're going in the right direction. Effort's not wasted, time's not wasted. Nobody's getting super frustrated at any point. But if that can be accomplished through the processes that we already have, why are we not better utilizing what we already have? Why is there a need for an additional meeting or this sort of extra step in the process? Is I guess where I'm still a little bit I don't feel like I have the clarity to sort of I feel like I don't have the clarity.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, that's the kind of struggle here, I think, is like, why isn't our existing process
Working
good enough?
right.
And does it make sense to modify this prelim process in some way if we can find out what it is that it's not doing?
Right, versus adding a whole new step with more time and more effort on everybody's part, not just the applicant, not just the client, but also our part as well.
Yeah.
Is there a way to streamline this and make this more efficient and make sure that preliminary meeting is more useful and provides better outcome for everybody involved, versus sort of adding another step that's sort of another thing we have to do?
And if it is public like it is, then your concept of getting all the board members' feedback at one go,
Right.
that would accomplish that as well.
Yeah, I mean, what she says is the most common sense thing that we're just plain not allowed to do. You can't just circulate by email these plans. And I'm on a design review board up in the mountain. I have a house in the mountains, and so I'm the chair of that design review board. And it's really crazy how somebody submits an application, all of a sudden there's an email and there's a 5-member board, and everybody's just by email discussing this thing before anybody's looked at it. And it's a grossly unfair process to the applicant, to everybody. We can't do that. We have to follow this process, and I believe that's the right thing to do. Let me respond, if it's okay, to speak to what you were saying and you're saying, because I think what we should do is not create a new process. I think we should reuse a process we have, which is this preliminary meeting with the chair and the vice chair. I've been through it a bunch. And let me speak not to the staff, but to the colleagues here, that my feeling is that the pre-meeting for the meetings themselves is generally a waste of time. Going through to see if the material board is right, or just reviewing each process. It requires each staff member to come into the room and spend an hour of their day to present to you what is already in the record. You're going to see it. It's not really that useful. And a much better use of the time would be earlier in the process, have the staff bring just informally whatever's coming down the pipe. Hey, I've got the two of you sitting here for an hour. Give me 15 minutes of feedback on what I see here. And I might look at it and say, geez, they really should consider bringing the drive on the other side.
Right.
Or this tree is going to be critical. If they don't back away from that tree, it's just not going to work.
Right.
And Stanford Shopping Center had a building right next to this line of old oak trees on El Camino. It was a huge issue going through the process. If they had just heard from board members at the beginning, this is an issue, do something about it.
Right.
It would have been really helpful. So I think that if we can restructure a process we already have and encourage staff to think of us as an additional help to the planning department. Don't ask us to do another formal review the way you get Public Works to do it. We don't have the bandwidth. Don't ask to do the same pre-hearing meeting and do some formal reviews in advance, but rather think of the ARB as a staff architect who's going to give you additional feedback to your staff, Jody, early enough in the process where it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Secondly, where we can look at it and say, this is going to be really important in the presentation. Make sure they think about this or present this angle or view, or the site plans they're looking at are illegible. Do something about it.
Right.
That kind of feedback, I can tell you so many times we get drawings that just are not a good package. It's so much harder to make sense of it. That ability to give informal feedback early enough that an applicant can look at it, I believe would be much more valuable, a much better use of the chair and vice chair's time when you have these meetings, a better use of staff's time than just rotely going through what's going to be coming up on Thursday when you're meeting on Monday.
Right.
And I've been through a bunch of those meetings. I just, my feeling at the end of all that was, geez, I'm glad I don't have to do those meetings again because it seems like a waste of time to me.
How do you do that thoughtfully? Like how it's not just 15 minutes of the chair and the vice chair's time. It's not, because they need to do a site visit. They need to do way more study.
But not necessarily those.
I mean, how would I know that that tree is important unless I've gone over there and seen that tree and seen that it's important? I wouldn't know that if someone showed me a site plan.
I would.
Well, and
How?
I
Showed me a
was,
site plan of a Stanford Shopping Center.
Do you know every single tree's location
No,
in
no,
Stanford
but I-
Shopping
but I know
Center?
darn
So
well
the
if
trees
you
are
can-
noted on a site plan,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah,
drip
but no,
lines,
but
all
in
that.
that particular case, you went on site and noticed it was bigger in person.
But
Like,
I-
the site plan
moment-
was
but that wasn't
incorrect.
The moment I looked at the drawings, it's like red flags going up. Wait, there's a whole line of really beautiful trees on El Camino there. I know that. And so,
But I'm saying you can't know that in every
no,
site.
of course not, but you can give them. When we're working in the office, I'll go around to my staff and sometimes you just sit down and look at what they're doing and just sort of casually direct, point, push. That's more what I'm talking about. And if we can get the staff to think of it not as a check they have to do, but rather as a resource that's available to them.
Well, can I chime in a little bit
So-
here?
and I think too that, if this was a second or third hearing, there wouldn't be that issue that you're talking about as much because you would have already had a first hearing. So you would know about the project.
Mhm.
And then the chair and the vice chair could just be saying like, is this ready to come back to the ARB?
Mhm.
I don't think that, I think what you're describing is a much later on issue here. When that first project, first submission comes in to the whole board, it's going to be very much more complete. But this preliminary discussion that would be pretty much what Jency was saying, as a process, I think is appropriate. The only thing that was missing from what she was saying is the legal issue of distributing the comments to everybody, including a drawing at that stage. We legally probably can't do that.
So the legal way around it is to have a public meeting where we are all,
Well,
you know,
I'm
together and it's
Let's,
public.
let's,
But that
What
would be
time
one public meeting out
frame?
of a limited number of public meetings. And what we're missing here, and we missed it on this last project, was that very early commitment to getting alternatives that might have worked better.
well, I think, so number one, we probably should, I don't know what time frame we're talking about. I was thinking more about it when we have a formal application and, we need to be careful that we're not burning all of our hearings. And
Yes.
so we could use the pre-meeting for that to make sure we're not getting to the last hearing and realizing that, the project needed a lot of changes. But I think we also have to be careful too, that if a project comes in as townhomes, none of us have the authority to change it into condos. So we can suggest that and make that recommendation, but it's not a requirement.
A lot of times when an applicant hears it from the ARB, they'll take it seriously at least that, hey, you're going to have a tough time getting this approved if you build that close to the trees.
Yeah,
And
but I
they-
think you've got some developers that are like only townhouse developers, you know, and so they can't even.
Osma's point is well taken. That if the applicant isn't interested in working with us, it's going to be a tough process.
It's just going to
not
be an
gonna
extra meeting that we spent
It's going to
time.
grind through it no matter what.
Yeah.
Well,
So-
that's-
Well-
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why I have a hard time finding a point in this process, is that this process appears to work for applicants that are willing to use it. And to create an extra, an extra gate, as it were, I don't know that that would necessarily improve the process. Because I know that this is coming from a project, this discussion stemmed from this project that we recommended denial on, but I don't know that this would happen every time.
I've been advocating for this for 4 or 5 years now, that at our pre-meetings, we should really be looking ahead in the pipeline, not at what we have coming down next Thursday.
Yeah, I
And
think that,
that's really my big push here, is that
Right.
that's an opportunity to refocus our time and staff's time way ahead of time, 6 months down the stream, what's
Mhm.
coming to us. And just do it informally. I know when I make an application, you're working with a planner, one of my staff is, and they're going back and forth on the phone all the time. What do you think about this? What's the ARB going to say to that? And this planning staff is making aesthetic and subjective judgments, and they're going back and forth. That's their job. And that's where I think the ARB or architect's involvement would be helpful to hear that. I think also the ARB members could say, you really should consider bringing this to a proper preliminary hearing. This is one that you want to hear everybody's benefit. And when they hear it from the ARB, they might take it differently. I don't know, I've been pushing hard that we should restructure our pre-meetings to be more focused earlier and not just an administrative or bureaucratic thing.
yeah, I think to that same point, it's just really, how do we better utilize your guys' time and efforts to begin with, right? If you guys are just sitting, simply going over materials boards, like that is something we can do in the meeting, like during the public hearing. It's not, and again, I haven't sat in on the meeting, so I'm sort of, talking from my inexperience here, so apologies for that. But I think just utilizing the existing processes we have, making better use of your guys' time, that it's focused on things that would actually be beneficial to the ARB, to the client, to the applicant, versus, some of this stuff that can just be what it is during the public hearings, let that be. And then save your guys' time for the things that are useful and the potential important changes that could happen early. So that would just be my 2 cents on it.
I want to make one other point here. We are part of the process that in general, the public says, oh, you got to go through
Yeah.
Palo Alto here. You
God.
brought it up here.
Yeah, we have
Good
we have a
luck to
bad
you,
reputation in that way.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is good. Oh, you're gonna suffer from this one.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's called the Palo Alto
I think
process.
This is the possibility to shorten the time frame here as well. Because if we can be of help in directing an early process, as described it, we could really, whether it's townhomes, whether it's this or that, if we're in a meeting and your folks are working with us, and you say, yes, but, you can't really suggest that, because we'll react to that. We will say, okay, then the next most important thing is that everybody who is in this project has to have a certain amount of open space, not just trees, but open space maybe, or maybe the open space is too big, or maybe the open space ought to be in another area. Did you consider these possibilities?
Yeah.
I'm
trying
I
to
just want to focus on things which are big planning issues.
Yeah.
And
I'm
you know
sh-
what? The PTC doesn't do it. They looked at the project and said, oh, we need housing. Great. That's all that they said,
Well,
basically.
I mean, I think the project that we're all talking about, the PTC's purview was only over the subdivision map. So there was limited, they could say,
One
yeah.
One of the commissioners
they-
spoke up and said, you know, the ARB had a lot of problems with this. But
Yeah,
it never took part. in
They
the
could have
rest of it.
editorialized more, but they didn't have any true purview to say much.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
I guess I'm
we-
just
we are-
wondering, I'm trying to think of things that we already have and, we have project web pages that we load up the plans to. And we try and do that, when a project is first on file. And so, and I also have a list of projects that are going to the ARB and I have to keep that list for the director. So, I can show that list to the chair and vice chair. And if you see an interesting address and you want to go look at the webpage for the plans. And, you could do that at any point that
Mhm.
it's formally on file.
Mhm.
Okay,
No,
that's a good place. So we're running out of time.
Yeah.
We need to stop.
I have a
so-
meeting at
Sure.
1.
I have a meeting at 1 too, actually. So I think this has been a good discussion and I don't think we're going to solve any problems today. But I think we can probably consider, what has been discussed and probably revisit again in maybe a month or 2.
Yeah.
Month and a half.
Yeah, I can get it. Do you want me to agendize it a month from now?
Mhm.
Yeah, let's discuss it at our pre-ARB meeting that's supposed to happen at 1, although I have a conflict with another meeting right now with that.
Yeah, I think we might be.
Yeah.
We might be skipping that, which.
No, we're on.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
thank you for the robust discussion. And I guess we'll see everybody on Thursday.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm so sorry. I have to go.
So, none.